All right, I would like to reconvene and call the meeting to order for the Nisswa Planning Commission Board of Adjustment, Monday, April 12th, 2021 at 5 PM. Roll call, please.
Don Jacobson.
Edelman,
Josh Young.
Kristen Hansen.
Mark Allen.
Maggie Wentler.
Brittany Cotner.
Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? Being none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries. Next, to approve the meeting minutes for Tuesday, March 2nd, 2021. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll approve it.
Have a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Next item is an open forum. Is there anyone present that would like to speak towards anything not on the agenda this evening? This is for nothing that's happening this evening. Okay. Moving on to public hearings, I'll entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Second by Linda. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. All right, first item is a conditional use permit application 005-21 to allow the placement of a digital display sign on subject property located at 23624 Smiley Road, PID 282-30506, owner applicant DH Docs LLC. Is the owner applicant present?
It doesn't appear so, but I can provide, answer questions.
Okay. Brittany, your staff report, please.
The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit to convert an existing sign into a digital display sign. It is a 2.7 acre parcel located at 23624 Smiley Road. It is zoned highway business, which is in line with our digital display ordinance. Yeah. It was subject to one condition of the dynamic display sign must meet and maintain minimum standards outlined in section 4.9.1 signs dynamic display.
Okay. I'll start over by Linda here. Did you
Yeah.
have any questions?
No, I don't. It's an improvement. It looks nice. The before and after photos here. I don't have any problem or concern with it.
I have to wait till she comes back. Oh, I was just wondering, which one is it going to be? The one on the front that's yellow or the one on the back that's gray?
But they have a before and after.
But, so that one's the before?
Yeah, so it'll be,
Does
the
the one on
one
the-
that has just the one picture is more the display on what will be presented.
Okay,
But the final will be the wood picture here where you have the wood on the sides and then the dock section over the middle.
and it's going to be painted yellow?
What's that?
And it's going to be painted yellow?
My understanding is it'll be remain in the natural wood state.
Okay, that's it.
Did they give you an idea when construction would occur?
Potentially tomorrow pending an approval.
That's quick.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
we should, it's a public hearing, if there's any input from the public.
Yep. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak towards this application? All right, hearing none, I'll close public comments. Mark, did you have anything to add to the sign? No? Okay. Well, if there's no other questions, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll submit a motion to approve the conditional use permit 005-21 for DH Docs with the staff recommendation as is. Pardon me?
And the findings of fact.
And the findings of facts. Yes.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. All right, second item is an interim use permit application 006-21 to allow the placement of 2 double-sided area identification signs in subject property located at 23836 Smiley Road, PID 282-3509. Owner applicant Conductor Holdings LLC, Roundhouse Brewery. Is the owner or applicant present? No. Brittany, your staff report.
Applicant is requesting an interim use permit to place 2 area identification signs. This is the policy outlined in our ordinance. That's why it's an interim use permit as opposed to a conditional use permit. It is on subject property 23836 Smiley Road. The proposed conditions were that the proposed signs are to have downcast or backlit lighting only consistent with our ordinance, and that the interim use permit will expire at such time as the property changes hands. That was the requested timeline by the applicant.
Do you know the size of these?
I do. They are 2 by 6, 2 foot by 6 foot.
So, and because they used to, not these people, but they used to have signs there and they're kind of low to the ground. It's kind of, do you know if these are going to be higher or more visible?
I believe they will be lower. I don't recall them stating an exact height, but they're just supposed to be more, there's 2 businesses in this one structure. So it's more so that they can keep the traffic flow separated was the intent.
Kristen, do you have any questions?
I do not, thank you.
All right, if you would like to make a public comment regarding this project, please step towards the podium and state your name and address. Hearing none, I'll close public comments. I don't have any questions about this one either, so
Looks fine to me.
yeah, I'll entertain a motion.
A motion to allow this interim use permit, application 00621, facts of finding, and a staff recommendation.
I'll second.
Do you want us to list those off, Maggie, or is that sufficient?
No, that is
Okay.
fine, unless they're adding something.
Right.
but, Yep.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
normally I don't speak, but I think because of the interest in the rezoning, and we have some new people on the commission, make a few points if I may.
Go ahead.
On the rezoning, just make sure when you make your motion, whatever, you take into account any potential environmental issues that may be present. Compare the request for rezoning with the city's long-range comprehensive plan and its goals. Does it fit in or doesn't it fit in? Just remember, just because a request for rezoning is made doesn't mean that you have to approve it. And the decision to approve or disapprove, make sure you list the findings of fact. That is especially true if your motion is to deny. It's very important to have the reasons why you're denying it. If you need to, you can table to the next meeting if you feel you don't have enough information tonight to make a rational, equitable decision. Make sure you don't create any spot zoning by any rezoning action you do. And remember, you cannot put any conditions on it. It must be a clean up or down, yes or no. And in environmentally sensitive areas, sometimes the DNR must have time to comment on it. I don't know if Brittany can address that one. And finally, just remember, in approving or disapproving the application, remember what is the benefit to the city if the request is granted. Those are some of the things you should keep in the forefront as you listen to comments and everything.
Thank you, Don. All right, the third item is the rezone application 007-21 to change the existing open space residential zoning classification to shoreland residential. The PAD number is 281-00660. Owner is Susan Owen. Applicant contracted buyer is Joshua Savageau. I'm not sure if I said that right. You can come to your desk and state your name. for the record.
Is that green light on?
It is not.
There's a little button on there.
It says push, will you just hit that push button so everybody?
Oh, yeah. Josh Savage will
There
sorry
you go.
about that.
A little detail on this. There seemed to be some confusion throughout the day today, so I wanted to kind of give a little overview of what a rezone truly means. Rezoning this property is not an approval of the 11 lots and or the 11 homes. This is simply allowing the zoning classification to go from one to the other. We still will be doing the sketch plan review as well as be requiring a preliminary plat and a final plat before any construction on the property could begin. I'm here for any questions. I did read the majority of I read all of the comments that were provided by the public. I thank you for those. And if you have any questions, let me know.
Josh, how we're going to do this is I'm going to kind of give you an opportunity to say what your plans are going forwards, just so the public can comment. And then I'm going to open it up to the public to make public comments. And then after I close public comments, then there'll be no more public comments. Then the commissioner will make discussion about the items. Okay?
Excellent.
Okay, proceed.
Yeah, so we have been working with Brittany in the city of Nisswa on a couple different concepts for a few months and kind of throwing some ideas around here for a while now, since we before we kind of went down this path of the rezone. We kind of vacillated between the rezone and just leaving the way it is. And we're still open to not rezoning it. Certainly, there's a CIC component that would get more density than the 11 lots that are proposed here that we're proposing in our sketch plan. We also have another sketch plan for a CIC development that would be 18 lots. And that would go with our open space residential current zoning. We felt this in just the neighborhood, that this would be more conducive to the surrounding properties and allow the CIC certainly would be a good way to go, and they're very they're more and more popular. But just as a developer, this is kind of me and Kevin, my surveyor, and we were kind of working through some different thoughts, and we just felt like this had the best feel, the best way to utilize kind of the roadways. Although the 18 lot development would have the same, we have a concept for that, for the CIC, that would have the same road, basic road concept as this. But so we just kind of talking with the city, kind of reviewing the ordinance and just kind of looking at it. We feel like this is a pretty good compromise. We're only a couple lots different than if we just did the same kind of concept non-CIC development and stayed with the open space zoning. But I do think I would be more, I'm kind of just deciding on which direction to take, and I'm kind of more leaning towards hopefully this, and that's why we're here today. But we didn't do the rezone. I think we would move forward with the concept review tonight for the 18 lot plan and go to the CIC route and then pursue preliminary plat on that next after review.
If I may, Kevin McCormick with Land Design Solutions, 11821 Lake Trail, Cross Lake. As Josh said, that we kind of looked at a lot of different scenarios here. And the one reason for the rezoning is if you go immediately on each side of the property, we're already into shoreland zoning. The plat going up Upper Roy Lake is shoreland district. Yep, there we go. And as we look at some of these things, see, we're surrounded by it for the majority of that. We have open space residential above us, not saying that there's any spot zoning, but this does kind of fold into your comprehensive plan. It's the orderly development pattern here. Josh is right on this. We've looked at different scenarios. Mathematically, we're looking at almost 22 acres, 2-acre lots under its current zoning. You know, we'd be in that 10 lot range. As it encourages open space to do these cluster type developments, the density can get much higher, even if you're keeping with that 50% green space. So what we kind of brought to the table with this is as the rezone fits in, and I know it's not part of the discussion, but what we looked at were rezoning this, still providing 2-acre lots. Virtually all the lake lots were 2 acres. I think one that we're going to be looking at just falls short of 2 acres. And then 2 or 3 non-riparian lots that equal an acre. So the design comes together, I hate to use the word a hybrid, but it really is. Under its current format, you can do X. Under the current format in the OSR district, you can get very dense. That's not the direction we were looking for this type of land. Even with the rezoning of this, if we were to get it, the really variant of it is just the width at the lakeshore on the Roy Lake side at 100 feet. The other riparian lots that would face Ray Lake, and we discussed this with Brittany and had some information from the DNR, they would consider that riparian. Our lots would be 200 feet wide. So again, it fits in both. We just like the aspect of the larger lots in the shoreland district. But again, it's shoreland on side to side of us. And as you go up to it on the northerly boundary and definitely on the east and west boundaries, everything is shoreland. That's conducive to your comprehensive plan. And that's our reason for that request today. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to public comments. If you would like to make a public comment, we might have a few here, so we'll be orderly. Whoever wants to go first, you can come to the podium, state your name.
Excuse me. My wife has got a couple handouts if she may. Yeah. My name is Tom Cameron, and we can put this down. We live at 986 Bass Lake Road. I'm going to read this because I'm not a very good speaker. My name is Tom Cameron. My wife and I, Mary, and I have owned this property on Bass Lake Road for over 40 years. My concern is on, no matter what happens, is the impact of changing the zoning or whatever on the lake. Now they call it Bass/Ray Lake. I'm going to call it Bass Lake just to, what's usually what we do call it. It's classified as a natural environment lake from the Minnesota DNR. By definition, natural environment lakes are generally small, often shallow lakes with limited capacities for assimilating the impacts of development and recreational use. They often have adjacent lands with substantial constraints for development, such as high water table, exposed bedrock, unsuitable soils. These lakes, particularly in rural areas, usually do not have much existing development or recreational use. If you look at Bass Lake in the spring, and if you look at figure 1 on the handout, this kind of looks like what the lake looks like in the spring. If you look at the lake in July, August, when the emergent vegetation such as wild rice, lily pads, and bulrushes appear, it looks more like those figures 2 and 3. And you can see where there's a lot of growth that's come in there. The recreational capacity is much smaller and more dangerous. For example, if there are 2 boats pulling skiers right now, or tubers, and a 3rd boat comes out, someone must go in to make it safe. Wake boats add a whole new dimension. the developers want you to change the zoning to these properties so they can increase the density of their developments. When they leave, all of us have to, that remain must live with those changes. I sincerely hope that in your decision as stewards of the land, that you also, as stewards of these beautiful lakes, consider the huge negative impact this will have on Bass Lake, and I think deny rezoning, the rezoning application. That's all I have. Thank you so much.
Do we have anyone else?
I think you'll have a lot of people tonight. My name is Paul Rasmussen. My wife and I, Trish, own the cabin on Bass Lake in Nisswa at 25221 Bass Lake Road. And first of all, I want to thank you for this opportunity to hear our concerns. And I hope and reasons why we believe that approving this rezoning request is wrong. And we hope that you keep an open mind and listen to our concerns and interests as we speak tonight. Because we have several concerns and this zoning request, I know we're just talking about the zoning request tonight, but there are a lot of issues with respect to these sketch drawings that you have that I think are related to this rezoning. And I think the rezoning tonight opens the door to the sketch plan and developments that have significant issues involved with them. With respect to the rezoning, there are 15 criteria set forth in the Nisswa zoning ordinance that you must consider. What you've been presented so far is the staff report, which identifies the 15 criteria, but leads to no conclusion and presents no facts or conclusions of facts which support each of the 15 criteria. And so before you move forward tonight, I hope you are ready and able to explain to us how you've considered each of the 15 criteria and what your decision is based on. The staff report that you have received reflects the interests of the developer and only the developer. It does not reflect any of the interests or concern of the property owners. We have not been given a chance to, with respect to any input in that report. And I think it's completely void of any conclusion. I think the only result, the conclusion you can draw from that is that the criteria are not met. Development is allowed under the existing zoning ordinance, and no one's debating that. The only reason I believe that the request is being made tonight is to increase the number of homes that can be developed on the land. And that only benefits the developer's profit margin. It does not benefit the neighbors, and it is certainly inconsistent with the Nisswa planning 2030 plan, and it's inconsistent with the, I think, the Minnesota State environmental concerns. I sent a letter to all of you. I hope you have it. I asked that it be delivered to you because I did go through the 15 criteria, and I listed what I thought were the property owners' concerns. Now, I haven't had a chance to speak to the property owners. We aren't represented. We don't have experience in development and land development. So, but I think I tried to articulate the best I could why we don't believe any of the criteria are met. Yeah, the comment made just a few minutes ago seemed to indicate that one of the reasons why the zoning application would be approved is because the land next to it is zoned differently. I think that's nonsensical. I think the whole point of zoning is that each parcel of land has a zone. And if each parcel of land was entitled to rezone because the adjacent land had a different zone, I mean, then zoning laws would be ineffective and irrelevant. The land, as you saw in your tour today, sits on top of a large bluff. And the current zoning supports the ecological environment and needs of the entire area and should not be rezoned. The zoning and development that exists there today and the smaller lots and so forth, that's from 50 years ago, and we're not developing in the same manner today. We have several concerns about the sketch plans that were distributed, and maybe we'll talk about those later on this evening. But there is several concerns and issues that we have with respect to the developments, which we think include components that are just not feasible and certainly not practical in with respect to the lake. I'm sure there are a lot of people here tonight that will speak about the unique natural environment. As mentioned already, the Bass Lake is a natural lake designated as such, surrounded by significant wetlands located on top of a bluff. I mean, we have to consider the environmental impact of a large-scale development on top of that bluff and in between these two lakes. And that is absolutely critical, and I think it is certainly part of your obligation here tonight. There are a lot of other issues that we can talk about. One of which I just want to mention is that we are concerned about this process. Like I mentioned, the property owners really have had no opportunity to participate in this process so far. I think we heard just briefly tonight how involved the developer has been with the city and this exchange of information and this work that has gone on to date. And our involvement has been kind of pushed to the very end of this process, and it hasn't been all that, and the access to this process has not been, seems to have been limited. We're standing here tonight on a weekday night in the middle of a pandemic without the ability to participate by Zoom and so forth. The plans for 25 homes on environmentally sensitive land, I think you are obligated to proceed cautiously. And I think that begins with the analysis that this zoning ordinance is not necessary. As you talk about the developments themselves, I will leave it to others to talk about some of the issues we have with some of the prior developments on the other plot of land by the developer and his relationships and legal actions with the city of Pequot and other cities, that we don't understand how those issues factor into your negotiations with the developers and what impact that would have on your decisions to approve any of the sketch plans that have been presented so far. But just based on the information and facts that have been presented to you in support of the application of zoning, we believe you have to say no. These are only my initial concerns, but my wife did want to mention, talk about just one of the many significant environmental areas, concerns generated by these plans that we're watching tonight, which I think are related directly to the zoning request. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you very much for giving us a chance to be here. I really appreciate it. This is the first time I've been without a mask in public in a year. And I think that it tells you how important this is to us. My husband has a compromised immune system. We were not allowed to do this on Zoom. So here we are. This matters to us. We are especially concerned about the wildlife in the woods and on the waters. Oh, sure. It's Trish, T-R-I-S-H, Van Pilsum, V-A-N, capital P-I-L-S-U-M. The woods and the lakes are home to many species. I just want to take 2 seconds to focus on one of those species, and that's the loon. And we love those loons. And they're on bass, and they're on roy, and they're really important. And multiple studies have reached the same conclusion that, quote, while environmental pollutants have negatively affected loons, studies generally indicate that loon populations were declining due more to housing developments on nesting lakes and increased human recreational activities on those lakes than to losses associated even with pesticides. Roy and bass are nesting lakes. In fact, one study specifically said the potential monetary windfall to develop, plus the increase in property appraisals and consequent tax burdens, has led many lakefront property owners to subdivide large properties. The study into small parcels. The study goes on to say that the only constraint on damaging development is local zoning ordinances. That's you. That's you. You are the people who have the power to say we will not put the desire of developers who frankly aren't really invested in the zoning thing after all. I was very surprised to hear today. You are the ones who cannot put their desires before the needs of everyone else who lives in the area. You are the people with the power and the responsibility to say enough is enough. You are the people with the power to protect this very sensitive sliver. It's a sliver of land. My prayer is that you will listen with open hearts and open minds to the concerns of the community. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? No? I'll get you when he's done. Yeah. No, go ahead.
My name is Paul Carlson, 1042 Bass Lake Road. I live in the cities. I came up, and that's how important it is to me. I rescheduled a lot of things today, including disappointing my grandchildren. That's how important this is. And I really appreciate you all here. I appreciate your attentiveness. I know that a lot of you weren't here. None of you were on this planning commission 30, 40, 50 years ago when other things were decided. And I just want to, I think that the last speakers have hit the nail right on, and I will just try to add to that. Interest of the developer. My background is accounting, finance, in land. I worked for commercial manufacturing. I have an insurance license and I have a real estate license only for the reason to help my job and my company make good decisions on developing manufacturing sites. I know people on the Waconia Planning Commission. I have also been on commissions, not planning commissions, in the city I live in the Twin Cities. I have been in contact with both Cass County and Crow Wing DNR. I've been in contact with the county seat. I have been in contact with other cities in their planning commissions. We know that there are codes that have been developed long before you were here. And as the last speaker made a great point, it's really up to you. You have the power. And when I talked to the DNR today, their frustrations is that they want to work with the cities and develop good land development. But to get consensus of a code around this area between Lakeshore and Nisswa, there are drastic code differences. And I'm not going to get into those differences. Some are the size of lots. How big of a lot does it have to be for them to have a dock, etc. Nisswa is very more liberal on that. Developer talks about a 2-acre lot. DNR says, yeah, it's a 2-acre lot, but it's only 100 feet wide. That makes no sense in an environmental area. It should be a minimum of 200 to 250 feet. That's the input the DNR gives. And granted, your hardworking Brittany here, you got your checklist. You have to make sure everything's within the current codes of the city. But my input is the DNR is very frustrated right now because they're somewhat handcuffed in this. And they're up to you guys. You are the ones that, as the last speaker says, you are the ones that are responsible to say yay or nay. Officials within the DNR, the county, other planning commissions call this haphazard development. And what does that mean? That no one is thinking beyond the checklist. High density development in a environmental area doesn't make sense. And not that we don't want development there, but can we come to a compromise and make it more palatable? Another example is at 25 homes. I have realtors telling me, okay, you got 25 homes. Are they all year-round homes? Does that mean that there's going to be a minimum of 50 people living in there year-round? That's going to bring, what, maybe 50 more cars down our roads? 25, 30 more golf carts coming up and down our small road? Not that I'm against all those fun little things people do, but an example of haphazard development is not looking at those things. Those things are not in code. Those things are common sense approaches to development. And I haven't talked to one person that has said, this is a haphazard development. This is the last properties that are available to be developed. Gull Lake Chain, according to a realtor I talked to, Gull Lake Chain, everything's all built up. All you have left is in these environmental areas that are very hard to develop. And the question they said I should ask the Planning Commission, why was it good to turn this down 30, 40 years ago when they wanted these properties, or 10 years ago? Why is it okay now? These realtors will, you know, I wish I could have brought a whole lot of people here. Lawyers, real estate people, other people from planning commissions, county seat people, DNR, but we had no time to organize this. I just heard of this, a couple weeks ago. Haphazard development means you have to look at some common sense things. I talked to the county seat. They want to proactively look and help city planners recode. We talk about zoning. Each one of these properties is zoned differently. There's a reason for that. You just don't go turn a zone upside down just because a developer wants to do something. There's reasons. What are the facts, the reasonings that these properties are zoned the way they are? And what are the facts? Environmentally, safety. I realtors saying you got 25 homes. It could be 50 more people. The high season and the 4th of July, we all invite our friends and family. And that's fine. These people who will live there will be able, they have the right to invite all their family and friends. But I got realtors saying, that's going to bring 100 to 200 more people down that road than there are now. Let's make sense of this. Haphazard. Let's start thinking beyond the checklist. 25 homes, 50 people will probably be living there. 50 cars maybe. High season, there could be 200 to 250 people in this little piece of property. And they're all going to come curiosity looking. I appreciate that you went out and looked at the property, but did you go all the way down to into Bass Lake Road? The terrain of it, the turns. So, there isn't a, and I'm sorry, I'm hot about this. But I don't have anyone that tells me anything differently. In the high season, you're going to probably have 200 people on that hill. Maybe not every weekend, but potentially. So take a good look at that road. Let's look beyond the checklist and stop haphazard development. It will not be safe. The DNR agrees that we lose anywhere from a third to a half of the lake size due to vegetation growth. I asked the DNR person today that the height of that season, according to the maps that were shown, how many boats do you think could be safely recreating in there? He said 2, one going north, one going south, and that is pretty tight. I witnessed small boat, we have a lot of boat traffic coming through there now. People from Gull Lake, Roy Lake, when the waters get choppy, they find our small lake. I call it Calm Water Lake. That's what I call it. And they recreate. That's fine. They have the right to. But let's think of haphazard development. If the DNR is saying, according to boating laws, you can only safely have 2 boats going back and forth. Here's what I've witnessed. We'll get 10, 11 people, boat bopping, and then a small fishing boat from Point Narrows with an 8 horsepower motor. A father and 2 kids were in the boat. And right in front of our house, I witnessed it. They were anchored out there, with vegetation growth between our land, our beach, and the open water is probably, 300 yards? I don't know. But I witnessed that guy and his 2 kids, a boat, a big giant boat, pulling in 4 or 5 kids on a tube, come between me and this wall to that small fishing boat, and they were almost swamped over. The kids were yelling and screaming. That's haphazard development. Just because this development's going to meet your little checklist, we got to get beyond. We got to find a body of people that want to get beyond the checklist. What makes sense?
I don't mean to cut you off, but
Right.
just so in
Okay.
the essence of time,
Right.
so everybody has a chance to speak.
One more
wanna-
thing I have to say is that we all know that the housing market's great, but it isn't for new housing. If you know, if you've seen, we have a 30% drop in new housing development year over year. And the reason of that is because of high cost of labor and materials. And what's happening in the Twin Cities is that we have developers that have to pass the land and sell it on to somebody else. Because of time constraints, I'll just mention one in Dayton. It's a large tract of land, and big box builders are going under on it. It's now with Hans Hagen. It's on the 3rd big box developer. But my conclusion is that I wish that we could have some compromise here and something that's palatable. Because if anything happens on our road, if anything happens on that lake, I will remember each and every one of you. And I will make sure that it will be publicized. It's documented. I'm warning you. This whole mess isn't your fault. I know that. And I know I'm hot, but I will remember each and every one of you. When a child crosses Bass Lake and they might get hit by a Bass Lake Road, and there's all this development.
I would just like to correct for the record, they are 200-foot wide lots. I wanted to have that thrown out there.
Okay. Going forward, I'm gonna want to keep it to 5 minutes, just so everybody has the opportunity to speak, because we're gonna have them coming forward and the commissioners are gonna speak. So it's gonna be a long process. I just want everybody to have the opportunity to participate. Okay, go ahead.
Because a lot of things okay, Jim Habercorn, 998 Bass Lake Road. With the exception of Paul, I'm probably one of the longest residents on Bass Lake Road, along with my dad. So I concur with many of the points that have been made, certainly with Paul and Trish. Some of the questions that I think come up are, I'm kind of confused. Does the applicant own the property? Who's asking for the rezoning? Is it the applicant or is it the owner of the property? And I'm not sure how that.
I can answer that for you if you'd like. The applicant is the person who's requesting the zone change. However, I have talked to Ms. Owen, I believe you pronounce her last name, and she's in favor of the rezone as well. So they both technically are applying.
Okay. And then one of the questions, and I know it's not necessarily a zoning question, but it's an important question. how do they plan on funding the road change? I mean, it's a significant road change to service all this property. And I know there's two plats here, but how are they going to fund that? Okay, with the inability to assess anybody that's not directly benefited by the road. And you can't assess the people in Lakeshore because you don't have the jurisdiction to assess us. So how are you going to pay for all this? How's the developer planning on paying for it? Because it really should be borne by the developer.
It would be the cost of the developer. Are you talking about the road vacation or simply the plan that's presented?
Well, the vacation / replacement, rerouting,
That's very in the air right now. We don't know if that's even going to be proposed. The Public Works Committee, I'm sorry, is doing a feasibility study on that.
Okay.
But ultimately, the road, at least in the development, assuming that the road does not get vacated, would be the developer's cost.
okay. And then, we talk about the environment, and I think that's really an important issue. There's a spot, you can hardly see it on that one because that's a non-seasonal picture, but there's a little point out there that trails out. Got a little small. It's really small now.
Hopefully this will help out.
It's where the wetland blue line delineation right there is, right?
Okay.
Go down, over, right there, right about in there, right there. There's a peninsula that, as long as I can remember, the loons have nested on. And it is a fine little peninsula that's barely submerged, which, if you know about loons, they can't walk on land. So their nesting has to be accessible directly from the water. They've been going there for 54 years that I've been up here. And that's right in the heart of where they want to do this. Obviously, we've got eagles that have come back, and just recently, last few years, trumpeter swans, which is pretty remarkable. So in my mind, there should be an absolute environmental impact statement, either if there's plans to go forward. If there's not, I think the environment is one of the biggest issues as far as not allowing the aggregate numbers of homes and traffic and everything that's going to exist with that. I think that's really important. So it's the only, as far as I know, it's the only environmental lake on the Gull chain. It's the only one. So I think we're tiptoeing in an area that doesn't exist anywhere else on Gull Lake. And it's not just for the residents to enjoy, it's anybody that accesses it via boat from Gull Lake, Roy, Upper Gull, whatever, to come and enjoy it. So you start kind of messing with that, and I just think that that's the wrong way to go. And the only person or persons or entity that benefits from this move is the developer. Nobody else benefits. Nobody. Potentially the current landowner, but that's a different. But only the developer benefits from this move. Period. That's it. Thanks.
Is there anyone else that would like to make a public comment? Please.
Mine is short. Jack Overby. I live at 25532 Roy Lane. And I know that you were out looking at Roy today, and I thought maybe I should go out and take a look at it too before I spoke to you. I walked to the end of my driveway and took a look at Roy a little differently than I have before, and noticed that it is a very old road. We learned last week that it is near the age when something should be done to it. I also noticed that it was a very narrow road, much narrower than a regular road, and that cars coming down Roy have to slow down and manipulate themselves around each other. And then it came to me that I thought, I wonder what Roy would look like if we had 50 or 60 cars additionally driving that road each day because of the new construction. And I then thought, goodness, if they close Bass Lake Road, that will mean that the 37 people that live there with cars will end up on Roy also. And I just think that there's something missing here. Is Roy going to be able to handle all of that traffic from these new developments? And I'm thinking that I don't think it was designed for that at all, and that something needs to be done. And I haven't, maybe someone has decided what would be done, but I'd be very interested in finding out. I appreciate the time with you, and with that, I'll stop.
Hi, thank you for your time. My name is Jennifer Haggerty, 7734 Lost Lake Road, Lakeshore. I just wanted to kind of echo and build on a couple of things that people have mentioned. Environment to us is very important. We are transplants. We are full-time now residents here in Lakeshore and have a beautiful, beautiful view. And there are a couple studies that I was looking at when I found out that this development might be going in. I looked at the 2008 study that was done on the vegetative states of the chain lakes off of Gall. If you look at that study and see that both Spider Lake that we're not talking about, but also that Ray Lake, as you're referring to it, they're some of the most highly vegetated states areas on our chain lakes, specifically the area in which the development wants to develop. And concern there on that is what it's going to do to not only the lake, the animals, the fish, and I think that's something that we need to make sure that we have a study done to see what this development will do to our environment. There's also another study coming out that the Minnesota University completed in October, and that is a wake study. We've got a lot of boats on our lakes. And before we add 25 more homes, 25 more plus boats, wave runners, I think it's our responsibility to take a look at what that study's gonna say and what the recommendations are on that. That study, I believe, comes out, the report comes out in May. So I think that's another thing to look at. And just generally, I think it's time that we do another study on the environment. We've got beautiful pelicans out there right now. They all nest up, or they all gravitate to the area in which we're looking to develop. And what is that going to do to those animals? The winter, when the lakes freeze over, the deer, I know not everyone's probably happy about the migration of the deer, but we've got deer crossing, coyotes crossing, going right into that area, dogs, foxes, yes, foxes. So it's just, I think we need to take a look at some environmental studies and make good decisions for the land and for the environment. So thank you.
Mhm.
Good afternoon, good evening. My name is Muffy Barron, and hi, Brittany, nice to meet you. I want to thank you for the opportunity to express mine and my husband's thoughts and concerns. My husband Scott and I are homeowners on Bass Lake Road, 912, Linda's former home. And we bought that place in December of 2010. And we fell in love with the neighborhood on the first drive-in on the dirt road with a heavily wooded forest, which provides a great sense of peace for us. The same is true of the beautiful wetland view from our vantage, which is breathtakingly unobstructed right now. These were our first impressions and remained treasured aspects of what we sought in our search for the perfect lake home. You've heard from many of our neighbors, both on Roy Lake and Bass Lake, in terms of the long family histories and emotional ties to our lakes, as well as our diligence towards respecting the environment of the forest, the wetlands, and bodies of water within our community. The concern we share is the current rezone application from ORS to SR. You've heard from many of us in terms of the impact this would have on the aforementioned treasures, and we're concerned there's not been enough research on these pieces of lake and land in terms of environmental impact, which you spoke about, and specifically pertaining to the history. And my husband sent something today regarding the designation of, or verifying the presence of ancient burial grounds on this whole area that was done by the Army Corps of Engineers in 1985. And I would like to know what your thoughts are on that. Is that defunct? I don't think those go away. One of our primary concerns is that rezoning of the project would set a precedence for the proposed property to the north of the parcel, as well as a number of other lots on both Roy Lake and Bass Lake, where there are wetlands and forests. Passing this application opens the door to dense development of homes or resorts where clearly nature did not intend. There are proposed 25 homes, as we just heard, that are gonna be in that area. That's minimum. I'm sure there's gonna be more. It also disturbs the wetland lakeshore where the rezoning allows access via docks and boat slips. Another concern is related to the prospective purchaser, who's a known resort developer and owner. Well, this has been downplayed by many as the development of a resort, specifically the northern piece. The design and diagrams greatly resemble the developments of Tom Steffens, who has resorts on the Cullen chain. We don't dispute his projects are enjoyable and lovely. And most, they benefit the city of Nisswa to a certain degree. But this situation is one where the developer is trying to force expansion into a space which would require massive reconfiguration, including eliminating and diverting part of Bass Lake Road to Roy Lane. We understand some of these topics are not on the table this evening, but they directly are impacted by your vote today. And I want to thank you for your consideration of these items, and I want you to think about all of the things that have been presented tonight as you make your decision. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Yes.
Hi, I'm Pat Weiss, 25332 Dulum Circle. Myself and my cousin Ted and Kathy over there, Dulum, have all been attached to the property for 60 plus years, and we're the adjacent property owners to the development that was pitched tonight. There's been many valid concerns that have been brought up. I'm going to go a little bit different direction with the fact that what we've enjoyed is the wildlife, the water quality, all of those things that have been mentioned by other people. But this development would be directly next to us. We have combined 17 acres and over 1,000 plus feet of shoreline on the south. Some of it faces south and some of it faces to the east on Roy Lake. And one of the things that's just a treasure when Ted and Mary Dulum purchased the property in the late 50s or early 60s is the fact that there just is nothing else around. The property that's going for sale is a property that the heirs of Lucille have inherited, who are now in their 80s. And that family has never actually built anything on the land itself. The land has been for sale on and off for an eternity and hasn't been developed for many reasons that have been mentioned tonight. Also, anything from water quality to density to bluff setback regulations to the DNR, et cetera, et cetera. Again, our stake in the whole thing is the fact that as an adjacent property owner, we would be then one of the last wooded open kind of an area. And our concern is we're going to find people walking through our woods. We're going to find dogs and things, kind of in our space. I don't want a fence surrounding it because we want the wildlife to be able to go through in the same way that it has always traversed the land over the centuries. We're concerned about the water, not only the drinking water, because I don't think that there's been any kind of a study that shows what the impact of 25 plus homes would be on the water table due to septic and mound systems. Obviously runoff, et cetera, et cetera. So hoping that the rezoning won't go forward and whatever the next step becomes as part of the development of the property is that there's very, very few homes. Or maybe I win the lottery and can fix the problem that way. I don't know. Maybe we could pass the hat, but thank you for your time. Appreciate your looking at it.
Good evening, Brian Pelto, 982 Bass Lake Road. My primary concern was the environment, and I communicated with Brittany. And my son is a naturalist, and I wish I could quote him and use his brain to communicate with you. He did not give me permission to say he's with the DNR. He told me that they are given explicit training when they try their hardest is they don't want to tick off the city council or planners. So he didn't want to get involved in this, but I just wanted to share that. A couple of points I just want to make. In my 40 years in the corporate world, I've never seen a process move so inefficiently. Pardon me, okay? How did we get to this point? In the last meeting, Tom, I believe, was asked about the road. And he had said he didn't even know if it was doable, that the pitch might be too steep, that the wetlands might be a problem on Bass Lake. How did we get to this point? Here's my question. Shouldn't have we done that first? We always did our homework before we advanced a project and before we rolled it out. And I would ask that you circle back and do your homework. One other point. In the Twin Cities, there's been a massive influx of verbos, and they're having a big problem with them. People coming in, renting properties for a weekend or a week at a time and raising cane in the neighborhoods. City Council is putting ordinance specifically in White Bear Lake, and I know the St. Paul City Council is talking about it. I think you should attach an amendment if you decide to pass this. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Keith Litke. I live in 906, well, it's a cabin, 906 Bass Lake Road. I've had it since 2012. Thanks for the opportunity to let me speak. We decided to save the best for last, and this is this guy. So I got some posters that I want to show. I am opposed to the rezoning, but I'm not opposed to reasonable development. That would make sense. I don't believe that this rezoning is reasonable. It's for a whole lot of reasons. Is the cure worse than the disease? This is a prime example of that. You know, your NISWA 2030 vision has this laid out right here as rural preservation on a natural lake. If this change goes through, it's going to be Minnetonka, and it's not going to be a natural lake anymore. This is going to change the whole makeup of the community. And I guess I ask the question is who does this benefit? Does this benefit the people in Nisswa? Does it benefit the people of Lakeshore? If the road goes in for free, it's still going to be very expensive. There's legacy costs for that road that the city's going to have to take up. Opposition is expensive. And who does this benefit? It benefits one developer And it sure doesn't benefit the people on Roy Lane. It doesn't benefit the people on Bass Lake Road. And I guess the one thing is, why can't we get more information before we do this? Where's the environmental impact study? Where's the water quality study? Here, I'll show you this one. A couple people have talked about what the lake looks like in the summer. That's what it looks like in the summer. This is Navionics. 333 feet off of the shore. It is 1 foot 4 inches deep. 1 foot 4 inches deep. I don't take my kayaks back there. It's all mud, it's all muck. What is that going to do to the water quality? There's a whole bunch of other issues that need to be looked at. We talked about Indian burial grounds back there. Do we need to contact the Bureau of Indian Affairs? Do we need to talk to the Historical Society of Minnesota? Let's get this information figured out before we move forward. It feels like we're trying to pound a square peg in a round hole. It just doesn't fit. And who does it benefit? I don't know if I mentioned this already, but opposition is expensive and the legacy cost of that road is expensive. This doesn't make sense for the city. It doesn't make sense for the people of the city. And it doesn't make sense for Bass Lake. So we should be, oh, this is my favorite one here. That's Bass Lake Road in the summer. Drive down it, you'll get teared up. People travel to park their car and walk their dogs down this road. We're gonna go from this, which is rural preservation, to that. That's not what the community needs, that's not what it wants, and it's not reasonable, and it doesn't pencil out for the city. So Bass Lake Road and Bass Lake is a treasure, and we should be preserving it for Nisswa. We shouldn't be turning it into a suburb. So thank you for your time.
Anyone else? Good.
Good evening. My name's Wally Carson, 7996 Bass Lake Road. I live at the point of the south end of Roy Lake and drive Bass Lake Road all the time. We're permanent residents there for the last 5 years. When we bought our property 5 years ago at this time, Jim Christensen, our real estate agent, I think a fairly prominent real estate agent in the area, told me that that whole bluff area, that whole area that we're talking about redevelopment and how it was zoned. And that was very important to us when we bought our property because we liked, I think as everybody else here tonight, we like the privacy, the seclusion, the environmental aspects of the area that we have here. And so to me, it would seem very unfair for a major change in the zoning of this property for the people that have bought and lived in this area to make such a dramatic change, especially because of the different reasons you've heard tonight about environmental issues and the density. Now, I drive that road almost every day, as well as a number of these other people here do, and it's amazing the number of people who walk that road with their dogs and have little kids and bike down that road. And so again, I just think the area is really not conducive to this level of density. And I think as the gentleman who just before me expressed, maybe there's some element of development here that could be considered. But when we're talking 11, 18, or is it 25? I don't know. I'm new to this. I just heard about it from one of my neighbors. And I'm even confused tonight with, is it 11, 18, or 25? So I think my request is that this commission please take its time to get it right. Don't rush this through. There, you can see there's a lot of people here tonight who are opposed to this and at least want to get it right. And so at a minimum for tonight, I would ask you to postpone it and give it more consideration, and also let more of us who live in the area be caught up and be more transparent. I frankly was very unimpressed with the developer's presentation tonight. It was very informal, very casual, nothing handed out. I still, when I look at these maps, I've seen multiple different maps and I'm still confused with what is the proposal as to what this development's going to look like. So I think there's a lot of need for clarity for everybody here. And again, I think it's way too dense. You know, maybe it's 3 or 4 homes or something like that, but not not 18 or 25. And so I would just ask you to please give that consideration, as well as, you know, you start hearing things about Indian burial grounds and all the other environmental issues. It just seems like it needs more time for this to go through. I also boat and ski in this little Bass Lake area, and totally agree with the comments that were made earlier that it's really only conducive to 2 to 3 boats at the most, one going north, one going south, maybe one going east and west a little bit at the most. But if you did add this number of docks and boats and congestion into the area, I think it's just an accident waiting to happen, and that'd be a travesty, let alone the impact on the ducks and the loons and the eagles and everything else that is the beauty of this whole area. That's why we live in Minnesota, isn't it? For this type of nature and environmental protection. So with that, I'll close, but appreciate you hearing us all out. Thank you.
This is definitely my first time here. I'm Dave Anderson, 920 Bass Lake Road in Lakeshore. And first time I haven't worn jeans in a year. So I have some reason to dress up once in a while. So thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. And my wife and I bought our property back in 1987 and finally moved up here in 2011 because we loved it so much, and continue to stay here and plan to be here for many more years if we can. So what I want to do is just kind of talk a little bit about some of the natural environment parts of it that really concern me. And I went through your comprehensive plan. It's well written, and I like what I saw. I just hope you can abide by it. And so I'm just going to pick out a couple of little things out of that, not the whole story. It's a lot to read, but I encourage all of you to read that at some point in time because it is interesting to see the perspective of the city. The number one thing is to maintain the water clarity and quality of the area's lakes. This policy is the top natural resource priority of the community. That means a lot to me. The number one priority of the community when it comes to water resources is maintaining water clarity and quality, and adding more development just puts that all at risk. So I'd encourage you to look at that. And just an aside on that, I do the Setchke disc for the MPCA, measuring the water clarity. I've been doing this for almost 30 years on Bass Lake, and it's almost been unchanged with a slight increase in clarity when zebra mussels came in as compared to Gull Lake, which has seen a dramatic increase in clarity, which means they've lost a lot of things from the lake. So this lake is doing well, and we'd like to say that it stays well. Another item on there is to ensure that development and redevelopment of shoreline properties does not detract where possible. It should improve the water quality of the lake. Well, I don't see any way that this could improve the water quality of the lake, so that's a tough one. Protect wetlands as important components of the total environmental health of the community. It also says, and I'm quoting, the city must value and protect its wetlands as the first component of placing value on total environmental quality. Again, a first, wonderful, thank you. That's what you need to be doing. Maintaining forest tracts is the next one. Forests serve very many functions that are important to the environmental health of the community, but not only do forests provide habitat, catch and filter rainwater, they serve valuable social function as well. Forested areas are one of the defining characters of the city, and they need to be maintained in a healthy state. And finally, provide wildlife habitat and migration. While high-value habitat areas have been reduced by development, the remaining should be protected and linked to the greatest extent possible to provide for habitat migration throughout the community. Again, you're focusing on the things that matter. I like that. So anyway, so as a result of this, I think we should at least do an environmental impact statement on this, find out what's really going to happen, have an expert somewhere. I don't know how that works, but it seems like it makes sense to me. We're dealing with not only the lakes, the lake shore, wetlands, marshes, steep slopes, rainfall, water management, forested land, and much more. We've already seen a boardwalk go out on Bass Lake, which was really a surprise to an area we thought could never have that happen, but that apparently was approved and has been built already. And that kind of sets a precedent, which scares us a lot, that we may just be saying, well, to heck with the natural environment and let's just build. And that's, to me, not okay. So I would really strongly encourage that you deny this request, or at least, as the previous speaker talked about, delaying it for another month. Give us some time to get this together. I've been in contact with a lot of people that just now hearing about this for the first time that should have a say in this, like, for example, the Gulf Chain Lakes Association, didn't know about it till yesterday. Well, they're the stewards of the lake is what they call themselves, and I would like them to be able to be a part of that. So it'd be wonderful if we could just at least delay this for a month and or deny the request for the rezoning. And I have one additional comment. Pardon me a second. Towards Commissioner Gettleman. As a former next-door neighbor of ours on Bass Lake, I hope you will share with your other commission members about what a special place Bass Lake is and how important, how important it was to you to protect the lake when you lived there. Your direct experience means a lot, so please share how you felt about it. We know you loved it, and we do too. Thank you very much.
My name is Mark Philhauer. I live on 25624 Roy Lane. There really isn't anything I can say about the environment that hasn't already been said very well tonight, but I do have one concern, and that is if you came out and drove Roy Lane today, driving onto Roy Lane is pretty easy. Great access, you can turn left, just drive down the street. Except for the fact you can't see any cars coming from the south. And adding another 15, 20, or for God's sakes, could be 30, 40, 50 more homes to that mix is going to create probably the most dangerous intersection we've got in the entire county. I know from experience, cars coming from the other direction towards Nisswa are traveling at a pretty good rate of speed when they hit that 90-degree curve, and nobody can see those cars coming when they're turning left onto Roy Lane. On top of that, as a homeowner on Roy, I hope I'm not saddled with the expense of widening the road, because the road right now, there are driveways on Roy Lane wider than Roy Lane. So adding that much more traffic, literally doubling or tripling the traffic, is really not a good adventure right now. So just consider that even in the current, if we don't change any of the zoning, they still have the ability to put a lot of houses on that spot. And I don't think that's the right thing for the community, overlooking all the environmental issues. So please consider that.
I'm Ginger Olson at 25468 Roy Lane, and I want to talk, not a lot of us are Roy Laners because we have a lot of people from Bass Lake, and you know their passion, and we agree with them, we concur with them. I think the biggest issue I have is as we went through with the Public Works meeting, we had a sense that we didn't understand or have enough information. It wasn't forthcoming. And some of the information wasn't always accurate that was given to us. And my point is, how can you vote on something to allow it zoned when you're not even telling us where the road's going to be? The Bass Lake Road people want the road. They want the road. It's the road they want. They don't want to come through ours, over to ours. And we've already explained that our road is narrower and it's a little bit more dangerous than those things. But I don't think that there's enough research that's gone on, and you're not telling us where the road's going to be. If it's going to be the new road that was drawn in at the meeting. And when we don't know that, how can we accolade you and tell you, oh yeah, vote for this? There's just simply not enough information, and we're not getting enough information. We feel like we've had to search for it or go gain it or go to the DNR or go to different other areas. And so it's not your fault. It's just that we feel like there's been so much dumped on so quickly with maybe not enough background and not enough knowledge coming to us or the ability to have that knowledge. For example, is that road that Tom drew in, is that going to happen?
It hasn't been decided. They're doing a feasibility study.
Right. So shouldn't that feasibility be known before you say yes or no to something? Where's that road going to be? We all want to know that. They really want to know that. They want to know that it's going to be Bass Lake Road. Yeah, they don't like it. It's been years and years and years. We're almost 40 years up here. It's been years that that road has been a pain. but they want that road. That's the road they want to be on. And then it has to down line maybe eventually be worked on better. But not to know what those parameters are before you take that vote, before we even know what it is, seems to be kind of cart before a horse. Thank you.
Any other comments? Yeah.
Hi, Dirk White. I'm a pharmacist from Sitka, Alaska, and not to upstage Mr. Carlson. Yeah, it was a long drive, and I'm an immunizing pharmacist, and I'm missing 3 immunizations, not just specifically for this, but serendipity allowed me to be here tonight. My sister and I are quarter owners at 25522 Roy Lane, I believe next to Ginger, yeah, and or Obi, yeah. And anyway, and my uncle is the other half owner, Wilbur Fisher. My grandfather, Don Fisher, Wilbur's father, purchased that property from the previous mayor of Nisswa years back. I believe it was about 1970. So we have a long history as well with the property and Roy Lake Road and Bass Lake Road and the lakes. And I guess, you know, a lot of things have been thrown out there. I guess the one thing that personally would impact me the most was back in the 70s during high season, I was in a fatal car crash on Roy Lake Road. And it was one of those heavily trafficked days. And a fellow was just impatient and decided he had to pass this RV. And I had a head-on collision with him and he died. And so the more and more traffic you put on Roy Lane, which is even smaller than Roy Lake Road, it's just going to increase that capacity that's not there. The pristine, the Gull chain, I don't want to say it's internationally known, but nationally, I know people I've talked, oh, they say, well, where's your cabin? Oh, it's up on the Gull chain. I say, Roy Lake, like, oh, that's on the Gull chain. Oh, I've heard of that. So you have a gem here in your county, in your jurisdiction that needs to be protected. Commissioner Jacobson, I believe you said you have to check off some boxes. You need to make sure that you know the benefits and the costs that you're going to have. Well, the only benefit that I can see that Nisswa would gain from this is an increased tax base. And obviously that's a substantial thing. But then you need to start ticking off the boxes. What are the costs to the city? The road improvement has come up. That's going to be a major cost. Then you have to maintain it. And yes, Roy Lane has been Roy Lane since I remember in 70 when Grandpa bought the property. All that's ever been done to it is the cracks have been oiled. So that road went down in 470 and it's never been changed or improved since then. But the other costs that I see, your road maintenance and improvement, what are the utilities? You know, who's going to maintain those utilities? Water line, electrical that goes in. Who's going to monitor the pollutant runoffs and the septic, the coliform and the, as a healthcare provider, that's my concern, coliform and E. coli from that increased septic load that's going to be on that bluff. Is there a good water table buffer there? When you take away that, it's equivalent of wetlands when you have forested land. I mean, they both have balancing effects in the environment. And you really need both of those. The forest land is going to keep water from rushing down into the lake and pulling with it all kinds of odds and ends, like pollutants from automobiles and asphalt and cement leaching. When you develop that area, you're going to have an increased runoff into the lakes. With all of that new grass that's going to be planted there, everybody's going to want to fertilize it. They're going to want to, and those fertilizers, as we all know from areas that have feedlots in the lower Minnesota, those lakes that run off, all of that fertilizer increases the sediment value. You're going to have, again, like I mentioned, high season on the lake already. In all the years that we've been on the lakes, I can probably say I've been in, what is it, Ray Lake or Bass Lake 3 times maybe, because it's a small lake and I've never wanted to go in there and disturb it. And I've seen like somebody fishing, that's great. For me, like I say, in Alaska, if I'm cruising along and I want to pull into a shore and think I'm going to go to this beach, if there's a boat there, I just keep going because there's another beach further down. So it's like, you don't want to put more pressure on your lakes than they can afford to handle. And I think you're pretty maxed out right now. And it's very important that you keep that ecosystem balanced out. And I understand how Gull Lake is increasing. And back when I was a youngster, Lake Wayzata was horrible. I remember watching WCCO and they would have divers coming up with all kinds of crap out of Lake Wayzata. And it's been cleaned up, but now it sounds like it's getting worse again. So due to population, but high season, you're going to have increased costs because you're going to have to patrol the lakes better. You're going to have more alcohol involved accidents. That means more environmental or not environmental, but emergency room visits to the hospital. Can you afford that? Maintaining of that, higher and more noise complaints. That means more police visits, more sheriff, water sheriff patrols, those sorts of things. That all costs. So those are all things that you guys need to be cognizant of and watch for. And I think I probably exhausted my time, if not everything else. But thank you very much for your service and allowing us to speak. I would, I guess, say also, not that it's the city's fault, but we have not received any notice other than through my relatives, and that was about 4 days ago. I know it takes a long time. The dog sleds don't run very fast up there, and there's not much snow this year, so, you know, but I'd appreciate getting any kind of information from you guys as well. Thank you.
Anybody else?
You guys want to?
Okay, if the gentleman can come back to the desk. All right, I'll be closing public comments now. So the discussion is going to be between the planning commission members, the engineer, city staff, and the developers from here on out, just so everybody's aware on the policy. Yes.
Just a question of fairness and governance. Why would the developer be here? We can't hear as part of it.
Well,
I mean, it doesn't seem like an appropriate, transparent discussion. Now we leave, you have a one-on-one discussion.
You
guys can stay.
Okay, you're allowed to stay, obviously. So how this, just so we have a working meeting in order to have a discussion with us and them, so then they can provide the information to you. And I will say that sometimes there's a misconception about planning and zoning. And I mean, I've been doing it for a while in different counties throughout Minnesota. I know Kristen has been doing it. We've been doing it. So I think sometimes how we go about it is a little confusing if you've never been involved. I will say it's a very long process, and this is just like the first layer that we're getting into. And I think a lot of people are wondering about information. How do we get more information? And you'll get it. Just this is how the process works, where you kind of get the overall information, and then Brittany can kind of detail on the steps that we have to take. But we're a long ways off of approving this number of development for this many houses. That's not going to happen tonight. This is a sketch plan review. And then we're just talking specifically about zoning. Okay. Does that answer your question?
Well, you're going to decide on the zoning issues that I'm taking now, then you're going to make a recommendation to the city council. And how often does the city council defer to your action tonight?
I mean, I can let Don.
What is the involvement that we have at the city council level, and how much weight do they give to your decision?
Yeah.
They must weigh that very heavily, because that's your job, to sort through all of these issues, make sure that the application meets all those criteria that's set out for your decision.
Okay.
The city council looks primarily at the record, which is the record which would be developed tonight, the comments and stuff, and whatever the motion is going to be to approve or disapprove. If the motion is to, let's say, disapprove tonight, and the developer doesn't agree with that, he has the right and ability to go to the city council and say, I disagree. I want the council to make the decision and overrule the planning commission. If the motion is to approve tonight, that also has to go to the city council, and the city council by a majority vote has to approve the change in the zoning. So that's only for the zoning. Now, when you talk about if it is rezoned and the developer wants to go in and do something, whatever it is, that has to start here with his plan, and then with the Public Works Department, if it includes roads and sewer, water, whatever, and those have to come together. And then the city council, again, when it all comes together, they get another chance to vote yes or no, the city council does, to approve or disapprove. So it's the start of a long process, and it can be sometimes contentious. And lots of things have to mesh together like gears in a car. It's not just one or two actions, it's a number of actions that take place. So you're not cut out. You just have to be aware of what the next move is and be aware and come. I've been doing this for 32 years, both here in the Twin Cities and a major city in the Twin Cities. And most of the time, people don't worry about government doing the planning and zoning and stuff like that until it happens next door to them. Then they come and they always say, we don't have any information. We don't know what's going on. That's why you were noticed about the meeting, so that you would come and you would get information here. Let's wait till the end of this meeting and see what happens before we can say what the next step is going to be.
Whatever they propose, ultimately, it is the zoning that we are concerned about, because changing the zoning, we don't go back from that. And as this parcel changes, the other parcels around it will change. So it is the zoning. So, and in addition, we were given information, as Paul pointed out, from the city planner that listed what were supposed to be 515 criteria met. So I hope that if there is a motion that you will tell us how to meet all those 15 criteria. And
By state law, we have to either approve or disapprove a zoning request within 60 days. That's state law. And we can't attach anything to any motion. It's either up or down, yes or no. Then the really work starts later on in the public works and stuff. When you get a plot plan come in, there's myriad of things to look at there. A lot of things going on.
Any other questions from the audience? Yeah. I mean, this is the very first step. Brittany, do you want to go through the process?
Yeah,
If the motion is not made at this meeting, we will need to have a 1599 extension signed.
Okay.
So we're at about, I didn't count exactly, I'm guessing we're about 37, 40 days in.
Okay.
We have timelines outlined by the Minnesota state statute that dictate that we have to let property owners within 350 feet of the subject parcel know within 10 days.
So do you work for the developer or for the city?
For the city.
You represent the city.
Yes.
I mean, I know you work for the city. I
Yeah.
just want to know whose interests do you represent here tonight?
The city.
Would this come up at the city council meeting next week?
Whatever the decision, whatever the motion is, it would come before the city council at its next regularly scheduled meeting is on the third Tuesday of each month. That
The
would be.
19th, I believe it is. 19th.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but when we got the document, I went through it. And as I recall, it was your recommendation that it be approved. Did I misread that?
It was for recommendation of approval, yes.
Okay. She's recommending approval.
Approval of what?
The rezone.
Why?
No.
Because I'm the staff
Can't do
that
that.
presents the arguments. All the staff report goes through the 15 items that keep being presented about what needs to be met for the rezone. Okay, we need to move on. We need to move on.
Hold on. So Brittany, as a city planner, is making a recommendation based on her experience, and it's up to the planning commission to agree disagree, and make a recommendation to the city council where they will agree or disagree.
That's inaccurate. That is inaccurate. There's several sources referenced.
I could present some information.
I'll let you get to it. Just wait. Yes, we'll go through it. Okay.
Can I speak, I guess?
All right, hearing nothing else, I'll close public comments. Okay. All right.
Thank you. I do appreciate, I know everybody here is passionate and this property's been there and I totally understand where a lot of them coming from and concerns. I feel like we tried to address a lot of the things and comments that are being brought up here. I'm going to step over to the diagram quickly here. Lot 1, for example, here is the only lot that would come off of Bass Lake Road. So from a safety issue and from what's all coming off, this would come off here. Now, we did do studies on slopes and all the slope areas. We actually didn't realize not every city requires a concept review. Okay, so the city of Nisswa requires a concept review, then preliminary plat, and so on and so forth. So we, Kevin, I tasked Kevin, we were working with Brittany, and we actually put a full preliminary plat plan together prior to thinking we could just go preliminary plat. We didn't, there wouldn't be a concept. This is just a concept. So we're not approving this concept, but this is the concept we came up with. Now, this road, for example, there's talks of eliminating Bass Lake Road. Well, as a developer, when you come around here, you know, you only have so much room for speed limits and safety issues are brought up. So when you start coming around this corner, you know, and you've got a 30-mile-an-hour or 10-mile-an-hour, and you have everybody in Bass Lake servicing this road, and you want to come through and kind of dump off and eliminate Bass Lake Road, for example. I mean, that's been discussed, which would be great. I would, you know, this property would now lose this negative road that cuts off the lake. But you're now talking about some sort of thing or having to go through a neighboring property here to get this road, because you're not going to be able to get all these people through here effectively. I mean, it's just not. Plus, you've got steep slope issues here. Everything we're doing is flat, so all the impervious rain will stay on the property and mainly within the housing. Most everything's set up as we diagram house. Primary, secondary septic sites for each location have been identified. All the rain runoff is going to stay where it needs to be. Now, if you start putting roads like they're saying, now you have water running off and going into wetlands. And you've got to have catch basins and all these other things that are going to be very costly. And again, it's just from a standard of making this turn.
Mr. Chairman, a point of order.
It's going to be very difficult.
That sketch plan doesn't have anything to do with the rezoning.
Yes,
Right.
that's just a sketch plan.
Yeah.
As far as rezoning, I just want to have a sketch plan review tonight. So if we don't approve the rezone, I would like to move forward and say I had our, you know, we followed the ordinance, we did our sketch plan, and now we're going to move forward into the next step, which is we have a couple different things that we've proposed to the city. Actually, there's way more density that can be performed than what we're doing with this rezone. But we have our sketch plan and the rezone to show in good faith what our intentions are here tonight. This property is in need of a lot of work. There's hundreds and hundreds of dead trees and indigenous trees, and it hasn't been maintained for years and years and years. Nobody's taken any deadfall or anything out of there. It is something that I would tend to go in and clean up this property, get rid of some of the issues that are.
Can we please, so we can have a good, a working meeting, we can keep the comments from the public to a minimum, please.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman, very much, because it is absolutely correct here. What we're talking about is rezoning the property right now. If it comes out of its open space residential into shoreland, can you do a lot of different things? Sure you can. Your 40,000 square foot lots, 100-foot wide, that type of thing. Very conducive to what you see in the surrounding area, okay? What we're proposing on this is not to do that. That's where we get into this, this type of thing here, where we're still offering 2 acres, which is the standard in its current format. Its current format, open space residential, 200-foot wide widths of the lots at the lakeshore, and 2 acres. Where there's almost 22 acres here, you know, just without even doing a common interest community in this, you're looking at 11 lots. If you keep it in open space residential, top of the paragraph, developers are encouraged to do a high density development. And I think that's the disconnect that the public is having. You can take, as a matter of fact, there isn't a minimum lot size in the open space residential. We're actually asking you to put us in a more restrictive zone. Other than the widths, the only widths that are changeable is the general development lake, which would drop from 200-foot wide to 100-foot wide. Everything else that we're talking about in concepts are going to stay the same. 200-foot wide lots, 2 acre minimums. That's where you're at right now, open space residential. We're trying to get into shoreland residential to create the next topic. Is that scary for everyone? Yeah, it is. Because now you're talking, everybody gets 100-foot lots, 40,000 square feet. That's not true. That's not true. That only happens on the general development side. The rest of this on the Ray Lake side would stay 200-foot widths and 2 acre minimums, just because of the way we've designed them. So as we're talking about this, this is not a high density development based on its current zoning. We're trying to move it into one. The only advantage to this developer is that you could create 4 lots on the general development lake. And that's kind of where we're at with this. And that's the reason for the request for the rezoning. Thank you very much.
Just a quick review. If zoning was left as it is, give us a number for a number of lots.
10 lots, residential lots. And if you're moving into that CIC, that common interest thing, 15 to 20.
15 to 20.
15 to 20.
Yep. Okay.
And there is caveats to that. We're not trying to shield any of this. We're trying to work with everybody on this. Under that current zoning, 50% of it needs to be remained green space. And that means we're going to cluster everything into one spot or do 2 little pods. And I know you have, I'm not going to offend my planner next to me, but I'm not going to, when you look at these type of developments, when you start clustering them, you start having problems right there because of the compaction and all the density into one of these places. So we'd like to spread them out. We'd like to spread them out. I've been here for 30 years in front of this council and a lot of other councils in this area. This is something I enjoy doing, and I don't do a lot of high density things. We're trying to get away from them. So thank you.
All right. I think we'll go kind of around the board here. So why don't we start with Linda, and then you can ask your questions.
First of all, thank you all for being here and feeding us this wonderful information. We need it. The main component from everyone is the environmental concerns and passion that we all have for that particular area. And right now, it seems to me that there are too many unknown variables that have not been addressed. And that has to do with the Public Works Committee, not having enough knowledge communicated to the people about what they're going to do about the roads. If it's a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, I mean, and he wants to build soon. So there's just too many unknowns. With that in mind, I mean, you know, I want to entertain a motion that from this committee that to the city, Nisswa City Council and the Nisswa Mayor to rezone the application 00721 to change the existing space residential to shoreland residential be denied. And that in contrary to the staff recommendation, I feel that you're not in conformance with the 2030 Nisswa Comprehensive Plan. There are so many components there that don't meet it. And one of them in particular is this, right from the comprehensive plan, is citizens and visitors alike do not want economic development and expansion to occur at the expense of natural resources. Community character is the most critical component of our plan. And one question comes, what's the darn rush? I mean, I don't want to see, I think it should be denied. I'm adamant about it.
Do you want to make a motion right now? Because I would like to be able to have everybody's input before discussion.
Yes, and I know you have discussion. So
okay.
yes, I do want, that would be my motion, but I just.
Okay, do you want to make it now so we vote on
Yes, I
it?
do.
Okay.
Do you want me to reread it? Yeah.
Well,
For
Mr.
Maggie
Chair,
to be able to get
you
that.
haven't heard from anybody else on the council. There may be
Well,
other
no, we're gonna have a
questions.
discussion.
Well, how about we let's listen to the discussion, then you can make a motion. Is that all right? Okay.
Certainly.
Kristen?
I actually very much agree with you. I don't believe that there should be a big change in this because of the impacts on the wetlands, the slopes that are there. I would personally like to see some of the septic designs because I have done that in the past, and there's one that's incredibly questionable to me. I don't think the land could sustain this, and if a CIC comes in with 18 lots, I think that's unreasonable also. And I just personally feel it's more should be developed differently than this and keep the open space in mind. It almost feels like a threat to say that there's a CIC that we can do that would have 18 lots instead. So I agree with the denial. That's what I'm going to say at this point.
Okay. Did you have any other questions?
Not at this point.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mark, did you have any questions about the rezone? Okay. Brittany, do you have anything to add?
Not at this time.
Okay. No, go ahead.
I have two questions. I may be confused a little bit, Brittany. I see on the application, Josh's name is the applicant and the property owner is listed as Evelyn Douglas. But on the other document that we got here, it says the owner is Susan Owen. I'm confused. Who's the owner?
Where do you see Douglas? It's Owen, but where do you see this Douglas name?
Right here on the application.
That's not Stefan's application, is it?
Rezoning application, front page.
Rezoning.
Double check here.
I just want to know who the owner is because we're not going to rezone anything.
I clarified that, and then we got a copy of the deed and gave it to Brittany, showing the owner and the sign. Or
So the owner is who?
Susan Owen.
Susan?
Yes.
Okay, the second, this is where I'm really confused here. The question was put to you, Brittany, about, had you made a recommendation to this? Well, I've got the page, and it doesn't say that. It says Planning Commission direction. The Planning Commission may decide to recommend approval of the application to the City Council. Denial of the application to the City Council or table the application if more information is necessary. The decision is for a recommendation of approval or denial. Findings of fact should be. This says that you didn't tell us. You got a different copy that I do?
I have your page as well, but keep flipping through the packet. It goes KLMNO, and then it's the staff recommendation. So flip about 10 pages. And
Okay,
that's
well-
her recommendation.
The second line.
It's after all the findings of fact.
I just wanted to make sure we understood where we both were. I was reading this one then.
So what is this planning commission direction?
Those are your options, because with
Right.
rezones, we're not allowed to place conditions, so it's just a reminder that
And then,
those are the
and then you
options.
have your recommendations, are you
Yep.
saying?
Yep, and that's on page 12.
Yeah, I see that.
Did you have any more questions, Don?
Just remember, whatever the motion is that comes out of the three of you, make sure if it's for denial, which I'm hearing, you have to have good findings of fact to back up why you want to deny it. It's going to go to the council. If the developer doesn't agree with the motion tonight, he can come to the council, and the council is going to look at what were your reasons for denying. Make sure you have your reasons down there. Okay?
Okay. Did we want to discuss the rezone and the sketch plan review at the same time? What kind of format?
No, and we do have a motion, so I don't know. If you
Okay.
want- Yeah. Did Linda not make a motion? No, she did. Okay. My mistake. I was wrong.
Okay. I have a question regarding some of it's kind of an overview things, and then reading the concerns and some of the stuff that you brought up. So I have a kind of a list of questions that I would like to have you address as I go through it here. A lot of the question have been about environmental impact studies, and there's a lot that goes into that just because I have that background in silt fencing and all of that stuff. Can you go into a little bit more brief detail, because I know it gets very complicated, on a development like this? What is all required of you to do?
This does not meet the threshold for a state mandated EAW.
Okay.
We are not developing enough land for it to do. The city does, in their ability, have the ability to request a discretionary EAW. So that would be up to the city then. But under its current format, we're following the city's ordinance, and it would not require an environmental assessment worksheet.
This question is for Brittany. Have you sought out comments from the DNR about this particular development, and have they commented?
Yes, I've talked to Danny McNeil quite a bit about this one, as well as the northern development that's potentially coming. I know that she has also spoken with Mr. Stephens. I'm not sure if Mr. Savageau has spoken to her or not, but they more or less said that the propositions meet the ordinances, and they did not express any concerns to me. Not to say that there aren't any concerns, but I wasn't told of any.
And Danielle, for everybody's information, is the county hydrologist, one of the main ones.
State.
Did you get any, because this affects two different towns, have you spoken with Krista over in Lake Shore, or any of the planning and zoning on that end?
Not for the rezone, no.
Okay,
I do intend to loop her in when we get more of a preliminary plat submission. I just didn't want to jump the gun and kind of give a half-finished plan.
okay. And I know some people have brought it up about some comments from the lake associations or even the LID boards. Have you had any communication with them? It didn't sound like there's been any, but I'm just wondering.
I do have all the Lake Association contacts on our MailChimp submission line that goes out whenever something happens with planning and zoning. Now, to say that one wasn't missed or they didn't unsubscribe or something like that. I don't know. But when I first started, I did put all the Lake Association contacts into that. So it's unknown what happened there, I guess.
Okay. A part of the ordinance that NISWA has dealt with a couple of times, Don and I have been impacted directly by it, is keeping the up north feel of this area. And that's why I moved up here. That's why a lot of people moved up here. Can you speak towards keeping that up north feel in what we're going with this different zoning change? How do you think that is being kept?
Well, again, the proposal and the sketch plan review is 2 acre lots. I think there's very few people in here right now that could say they have a 2 acre lot. And when you go through all of the pertinent information that everyone is concerned about, and they're valid concerns. There is nobody here saying, let her rip. When you go through your preliminary plat process, soil analysis are done, density requirements are done, stormwater management is done. I see a lot of people shaking their heads tonight. Oh gosh, these things are covered under your ordinance, and they all come through the platting process. So as Mr. Jacobson said, we're in the initial stages of this. And I would like to make one other comment before we go by. Please don't take anything I said about a CIC as a threat. That's your ordinance. That's your ordinance. That's your law. That's not me. That's not me threatening anybody with higher densities or anything. That is your law. Ordinance is law. That is what we're referring to. It's not a threat. We're here, we have several designs on the table that we're ready to come through with. And the other thing too, on roads that we keep neglecting, these are private roads. That ties into your up north feel. This isn't going to be a city road. We don't want it to be a city road. We want it left for a mechanism for the city in the future, that it's going to be 66-foot wide outlot. If 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, next week, after it's recorded, the city would have the ability to turn it into a public road. We want a 2 acre lot subdivision that towers over most of what we're hearing from these folks that are objecting. We want a private roadway that's maintained by private individuals in a maintenance agreement with individual septics. And as far as septics go, all our building activities, again, are coming up at the top, keeping that Northwoods feel. You're not going to see a lot of this from the lake shores. And the Crow Wing County soil book is relatively new. It indicates nothing that was said by your other commission members. But again, those are things that come into play as this thing progresses. So if you're looking for those answers, we're giving 2 acre lots, we're giving a private road, we're giving everyone what they're looking for when they come up here is that up north feel and the ability of private ownership. Thank you.
You had mentioned about private ownership, and I had asked this question when I was out there. It is my understanding that that is a public road. Is that correct? The one that's running along Bass Lake there, Roy Lake?
Yes.
It's public road. It's maintained. Do you know what the road right of way is? And is it 33? What is the setbacks on that?
Right now, there is no right of way.
That is correct.
Okay.
Would be all prescriptive.
Okay.
Right.
And so much for half centuries.
Yes, and in the platting process, that's what we kind of touched on at the road committee. We're giving the city the opportunity to obtain that right away. Not saying it's going to make that road easier to deal with, because it has its luggage. It's got some baggage to it, but right now you don't have it. We're willing to give it to you, and it doesn't matter what the development ends up as. Whether it stays open space residential or it goes to shoreland, that right away is going to be something that's going to be obtainable through the platting process. And that is our intention there too. Give it 66 feet.
Okay. I think that's all the questions I had right now.
Yeah, we also plan on doing, wetland delineation on the property. And like Kevin alluded to, there's some things we just can't do until we get into the plating process. We can't analyze soils and septics and do all these things because, I mean, we could do some borings, but it's all, we got to make sure that they're properly identified on whatever plat we're going to be, presenting in the future. And right now, we're at a concept stage.
And as a developer, when you're talking about doing wetland delineations and SWIP planning, there's a lot of cost involved in that. So I can understand that you would want some, at least direction, if it's approval or denial, so you know what you can and cannot do, which I
That's correct.
understand.
Correct.
Yep, and that's the process we're embarking on here today, so.
All right, did anybody have any follow-up questions? Brittany, did you have any follow-up questions?
Not this time.
Okay. Did you want to make your motion now officially?
Yes.
Okay.
I will entertain a motion by the Planning and Zoning Commission to the Nisswa City Council and Nisswa Mayor to rezone application 00721 to change the existing open space residential zoning classification to shoreland residential PID 281000660 be denied, and that it's contrary to the staff recommendation that it's not in conformance with the 2030 Nisswa Comprehensive Plan Use, Section 3.7, Chapter 3.
Will you say that number again, please?
The PID?
No, the comp plan. You said something after the comp, it's not in compliance with the comp plan?
Section 3.7,
Yep.
Chapter 3.
Thank you.
Do I have a second or an amendment?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Mr. Chair, just to make sure, you've got to include your findings of fact, and you have to be very specific why you're saying no to the rezone. They should be listed in the document.
Okay. Did you want a specific list from the comprehensive plan? Is what you're looking
Well,
for?
it's not me, it's.
I understand.
I'm just saying, you have things that, environmental concerns, water quality concerns, traffic concerns,
Yep. Can you have
things like that.
Do you have an amendment for the motion then?
I do. Never done this before,
I
so.
understand, that's fine.
If
I would
it
like-
helps, we have to change letters A through, I believe it's O is the last one.
So we have to address each one of those?
I think it has to be one that, you have to have at least one that is your basis for denial. The findings of facts ultimately is what would be taken to court if we were to ever end up in some kind of a litigation.
I have one.
Okay.
Both lakes are seriously stressed, and allowing additional residential density on the parcel will have a significant negative impact on wetlands and the lake's water quality. Approving the rezoning application will be harmful to the wetland and water quality of Bass Lake, a natural environmental lake. That all comes together with the tearing that bluff down, putting docks in. It all rolls together.
Thank you.
Did you get that, Maggie? Still ready? Okay.
Just a question. So on Bass Lake, we are in, I would like to put on record that our concept does meet every part of the open land residential component for size, width, and everything else. So can you clarify, Linda, on that?
Well, I mean, ultimately, well, first of all,
No, you're in a motion right now, and it's inappropriate for a developer to jump in. You make your motion and.
The discussion is kind of over once the motion's made.
Oh, okay, good.
Okay. All right, did you have anything to add?
No, I believe we stated that it is not in conformance with the land use plan, correct? Okay.
Okay, was there any other areas that you thought it does not meet the requirements
No, I believe
from
so.
either of you, just those two? Okay, or just that one? Okay. Did you get that? Okay, all those in favor
Of the denial?
of the denial?
Aye.
Of the denial.
Of the denial.
Yes.
I will be opposed. Motion is defeated. Motion is defeated to not approve the conditional use permit. Or the, sorry, the rezone. Motion is approved to deny.
Right.
If that makes sense, sorry. Okay, going forward, you'll have to refer back with Brittany to kind of go the next steps.
Correct. Well, can we do want to do our concept review. I mean, that's really the main thing that we're up here today.
Yep.
So, we're not going to do that now. We're going to discuss that. We'd like to continue.
I mean, it's up to you. If this is different, if it's gonna vastly be different now that this was denied and you still want to do a sketch plan review, we can do that just so you get more information. Is that what you like?
Well, it's just part of the ordinance that we do a sketch plan
Right.
review. We're
Yep.
not, this isn't a plat, so we would like to be able to still move forward with the plat.
Okay.
Plating process.
Yep.
So we want to, as the city requires a sketch review, we would like to have it done tonight.
Okay. So with the denial of the rezone in mind, let's go to questions about the development itself for the sketch plan review, talking about lot size, septic and all that stuff. So, it was brought up a couple of times, what, the septic systems, specifically, can you kind of go into detail on construction, the process? I know that if you're not involved in the process, it's kind of another time-consuming thing where you have to have a licensed designer and a licensed installer. Will that all be done by the same person? Is it going?
Correct. The design portion is site-specific, if we're going individual lots. But what they do come in is they specifically come in and we check the soils to see if they're conducive for septic systems or what type of septic systems they are. Again, that's all part of the preliminary plat process. So those documents are done individually. There are primary and alternate sites done for each dwelling, unless you're into a common interest type situation where you might do a combined system of that sort. But again, that's kind of the process that's followed, that you're assuring the public, you're assuring the buyers that this ground is conducive for septic systems. And we've gone through this in many, many, many times that people want to say septics aren't safe. They are. You guys control them. You have setbacks from the lakes that control these. They're way different than they were when we first started. You used to be able to go 50 feet. And now you're put at the wetland, you're put at the OHW setbacks. So all of those things are good. But they are done site specific. As lots are sold, someone comes in with a home, then the designer will design a specific system based on that preliminary information. I'm going to put it here.
Can you go into some detail about docking? I think there's some confusion about how that works, how the individual lots are, each individual lot has docking rights if they're on the OHW. Is there certain lots that have access to the water and certain lots that do not? And on which bodies of water are we talking about?
Josh?
Yep. Well, depending on which concept we go with, obviously, we've asked those questions. We've discussed that with Brittany as far as docking goes, and our intention would be to more or less limit the amount of docks and do more of a shared boardwalk access for everyone, so that you're limiting the amount of, individual docks. I know there is one that somebody just put in a couple lots down that just previously sold with an individual dock, but it would be more of a shared docking system to create something that is safe, that's going to last, that would be done appropriate, and there would be, overall less impact to get to the lake.
And one thing about docking too, just so everybody understands, there's a reason why the DNR isn't here tonight. And one of those things is docking, even on these natural environment lakes. The law is very specific. You can put a dock out until you reach navigable waters. There's not a restriction. What Josh is trying to do is to avoid hundreds of feet of those at individual lots. So, you know, again, these are things that we can work with the DNR to stay in compliance, but there isn't a restriction that the DNR imposes on anyone. You can put your dock out until you reach navigable water. It doesn't matter what it is. It's your cost. So I'd like people to keep that in mind too.
Okay.
And that's part of goes back to the layout of what we're doing. It's an expense, obviously, to get to the lake, and how many docks do we want? And we're trying to, you know, make it viable. I don't represent just me as the developer. I'm here as behalf of the seller too, the owner of the property. You know, so they're trying to sell this property and have been, and we're trying to come up with some options for them to do that, you know, and I guess docking wise, really that's my, you know, I was on the Ray side trying to find the least, you know, obviously distance kind of on the northern end. We put an easement in here to showcase where we would have like an easement where it'd be a shared dock system for the owners on Ray Lake there.
One of the things too, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to jump right in, but I will if you'll let me. One of the things I was just asking Brittany, there was concerns about EAWs and the environments here. Get rid of that so I don't fog up. This may not meet the threshold for an EAW. City Council may not invoke one, or the Planning Commission may not recommend one. But one thing that we can do, that we would do, is do a preliminary endangered species report. And I've done those in the past in many locations. The DNR will combine things in this site specific to this area, what's there, and they include many things. They include, we've encountered endangered green dart minnows, eagle's nests, you know, all of these things that are around the area that could be a problem that you want to look for, rather than going into an EAW, which may or may not happen. So basically you ask the DNR for that specific report and they will provide it for us, and we'd be happy to do that. Another thing too, as you talk about developments in this area, there was mention of Indian burial grounds. That could be true, but that doesn't stop a development, but it is important. It is very important. Archaeological phase ones will identify whether or not you have that type of burial ground or anything in the area. It can be then cordoned off and remain, or they can excavate it and take it to a museum. So all of those things kind of follow through with your platting process, no matter what your zone is. So those are things that will get done.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
While it doesn't meet the standards for the EAW, the council can decide to do it, but I would say this, that letting the developer do the EAW is like letting the fox guard the hen house. If you're going to do an EAW, it's done by the city through the city's staff, or city hire somebody to do that, but the developer should not do it.
I don't believe that holds water, sir. I'm sorry. I would challenge that with council and your legal counsel. I'm telling you now, that's an unfair statement. Unfair. And I'm surprised that came from you, Mr. Jacobson. I'm sorry.
Well, I've seen enough of them done, and it's always been done by the city.
We'll see. Thank you. That is not a threat, folks. That's a statement. I don't understand. Nobody here is threatening anybody.
We're going to have a conversation between us two right now. I would recommend that if you have concerns, and there's a lot of concerns in here, and I think they're legitimate, I think you should voice those concerns, but that's what the city council is for. That's what the city staff is for. And I can tell you that this city staff in my experience is exceptional with responding either to developers or to concerned property owners. So I encourage everybody to speak with city staff because they're always willing to give as much information as they can and be very transparent. You cannot, just wait. Let me get through this first part and then we can go back to that. Did any other commissioner members have any questions about the sketch plan review portion?
No.
About the lots, the lot size, anything, where things are situated, concerns about runoff? I just want to give them
My
some
main concern
direction.
is when I mentioned the thing about the quality of Bass Lake natural environment, you just sort of pinpointed it when you sort of vaguely talked about docks. You really weren't too specific about what kind of docks or how many. And there again, that's going to impact the water quality, the whole environment of that particular small lake, which is like a precious little gem there. And by adding homes that are going to access it, docks that are going to be put in, additional boats, additional people using the lake, more so than even now, I see that as a problem. So, but as far as any other questions, these houses that would be built, maybe you don't have this now, but what kind of price point are you looking at?
I'm not going to speculate on that. I'm sorry. I don't know. It really depends on what we're just going over a general concept here. It really depends on how it would lay out and exactly what it would be. I would probably sell the lots, build on a few, and then just sell the lots to private party. And then, so there is a lot of room on these lots, so they could, depending on what they want to do, I suppose.
So there would not be a consistency in the style of homes that are built there? You'd be selling the lots?
It really depends which direction we go. Under the first proposal, there's a little bit more room. We laid out a pretty large foundation of 3,867 square feet. That's a large home on there. So that would be massive. I would think it would be much smaller than that as far as the footprint on the lot. So these homes are much bigger, but if we went with the CIC portion, then we'd be limited like 75 by 75 in that specific area outside of the septic area. So that would be more probably all the same. You'd have a consistent, maybe one or two designs that you would go with under that, and it would be more of a uniform type development opposed to people building more what they, their dream or, kind of deciding I want to have a 2-story or Rambler, I think you'd have the CIC would be more of a consistency there.
Would there be just one home builder, or would there be an opportunity for other builders to come in and build different homes?
Most likely, I'm also building in Cross Lake. I've done some developments in Cross Lake, on Rush Lake and Cross Lake. We did one last year. Me and Kevin did 4 lots in city of Cross Lake, and I'm also building built 2 homes on the Whitefish chain in the last year. So I would probably be one of the builders. There's also some other parties interested. But most likely, I might just open it up, to open builder. And then, anybody could pick who they wanted to kind of work with.
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Now that the voting is done, I can make comments in this section. On lot 7, you're missing a location of a water well. When you talked about the road, the interior roads, they were going to be private. But you also mentioned that it sounded like at some future point, you might want to turn it over to the city. You should make sure that the city standards are met on these roads. Lots number 1, 2, 3, and 4 are very narrow and very long. I think that you're going to have a heck of a time in the winter. These are year-round houses and driveways and stuff like that. And I would look at lots 1, 2, 3, and 4 a little bit askance. I think you're trying to shoehorn a lot of stuff in there. And at the turnaround at the most southern part, I think you'd want to talk with the Public Works people about extending that road down to the bottom of the mount there. Get rid of the turnaround and just go straight through so that you have a road that goes all the way through. Talk with them about the possibility of doing that. I didn't look at it real close. So
Yeah, we had a meeting last week and kind of went through discussions, and we're here. There's some steep slopes there that may be an issue, bringing that all the way through. And then some of the homeowners on Roy had a concern that people would bypass Bass Lake and go through all the way down.
there's another portion on here.
I think it could be, I don't know if that road could support people driving through there too with that corner safely.
You should talk it over with Public Works. Also, I've noticed that you generally on plats that when you go to build, it's pretty much clear cut. And I think that's one thing that we have to preserve is trees. And you can look at some selective cutting for the location of the structures, but to leave the rest of the trees where they are. I think that everybody likes trees, and to cut them all down, I think that's a terrible thing to do personally. Also, there's a lot to the north of here which does not show up on this. They're in with sketch plans too. Is there any idea of extending that turnaround to the north?
We have not at this point, no. No, sir.
You might want to talk to the developer up there to see if he's got any plans to, or if he's going to dead end it.
Any other questions?
Plenty later on when they come in with the final. Yeah.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, earlier you asked if I had any other guidance or thoughts or anything.
Go ahead.
The steep slopes are one of the reasons why I didn't agree with the way that it's developed, like Mr. Jacobson said. Lots 1, 2, 3, and 4, very steep slopes right there, bluff. And a lot of erosion and runoff can occur. That's a known. A lot of wetland down at the bottom of that could be impacted greatly. And just, they're just such narrow lots that the houses you show touch each setback of the lot. It just seems like a city lot instead of something that people are coming up here to recreate on instead. And it may be a large footprint. It does look like it's a large footprint for the house. However, people don't really want to be that close to their neighbors up here unless it's an existing cabin.
And yet your shoreland residential ordinance calls for how wide of a lot?
100 foot?
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. I'm just pointing it out. And as you look at these things, the construction is on top of the hill, away from bluffs, away from steep slopes. It's driven by your ordinance. Wetlands are protected down below. As a matter of fact, you're one of the only cities, and I'll commend you on this, by the way. Your setbacks from a wetland that adjoins a river or lake come from the edge of the wetland. So if OHW is here, and in this case, we have a wetland to it that runs about well over 100 feet to the end of the wetland, that's where your construction site sets back from. So not only are you guys protecting the water, you're protecting your wetlands with some of the highest wetland setbacks that I've encountered in any of these communities. So that's a good thing. We're not opposed to any of that at all.
I think as we get through, if the process goes forward, I think maybe we need to do a little bit more extensive site visiting where we can go out and walk it. Because I mean, we're out there today, but I don't think we had a whole lot of opportunity to really walk it. And you can look at a topo map and you're really not going to see.
I agree.
You're not going to see it. I mean, you really need to walk it. And when you drive in, it is pretty significant. I mean, there's a lot of bluffing there. And when you start doing excavating and moving dirt, that's a lot of dirt to move.
But keep in mind, you can't. You can't. The bluffs are off limit, 30 feet back from the top of a bluff, and your steep slopes are very restrictive as well.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah.
With regard to where that road is and where that bluff is coming down, I mean, right now, just driving on it, you can see there's really significant erosion just by the road.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's going to have an impact on that body of water a lot over the course of the years because it's running off.
And again, I think that's a lot of stuff that your own ordinance, whether this does anything or not, it already protects it with your steep slope portion of your ordinance and definitely the statewide mandate on bluffs and bluff setbacks. That's what it's there for.
Brittany, does that classify as a bluff? I mean, is that under the ordinance of a bluff?
It's hard to see on this image, but the one that you have in front of you. The one that you have in front of you, the bluffs are the darker shaded area. If you do look at that southern end that they were discussing, there is a bluff on the eastern side. And although the western side is not a bluff, it is about a 20% grade for at least a good portion of it. So that's
correct.
Reference to what he was talking about.
Okay.
Yep.
The other thing that you might want to consider, and this isn't always part of the site planning, but in my experience, it's really a good thing to have transparency with the neighbors, especially the Lake Association, because it's a big concern for a lot of people and for me. I would try to have communication with the Lake Association. I know most of it's starting to go up again because we lose so many residents in the wintertime and they're starting to come back, just to get some recommendations from them. Just so you get that public aspect piece. It's always good to be transparent. We have Grandview Lodge in here a lot for different things, and he's always very transparent. Grandview's always very transparent with the neighbors, and I think it goes a long way to give them the information so it's not sprung on or they don't feel like they're not getting enough information. So I think it's important to try to be a good neighbor and realize that once you're gone, the people that are there have to live with it. And I think you understand that. Hopefully you understand that, but that's part of that piece in being the kind of development that we want in the city.
Very good. Point taken. Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions, concerns, comments? Anything from Mark? Do you have any questions, concerns?
Just about bringing that talk, I guess, just as you're going forward, would you understand there's a sketch plan, you state utilities, we have power and natural gas across there, so would you like to see those on there? So
Absolutely. Absolutely, Mr. Hamlin. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all very much. We appreciate all your time. Really do. Thank you.
All right. I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So motioned?
So moved.
So moved, sorry.
Do I have a second? Second by Linda. All right. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. All right. I am going to, what we're going to do quick is I'm going to run through old business and then I'm going to open up for more comments, just because I know a lot of people have some questions and comments that they want to make.
I just have a real brief question.
One second. Let me do old business, then we'll get to it. Okay? Just a second. We're almost through it. Is there any old business to discuss?
No.
Okay.
If I want to communicate to board members, do I go through Brittany and then she transfers the questions or information to me? Is that how it goes, or do you have public emails that I can?
Yeah, I mean, in the past, we've spoken to people directly. I've talked to people. I don't care. Yeah, you can have you can provide my email and my phone.
So I can call Brittany to get her email.
Sure.
It's better if you send everything to Brittany and she sends it out to the whole group instead of just one person getting some information and the next.
That way
person
everybody
doesn't have.
knows.
If you want to,
gentlemen were talking about if you don't change the zoning. When he was talking about a CIC, and I did take that as a reference. But what is a CIC?
It's a common interest community. So essentially, when you buy the house, you're only getting the property that your house is on. And then it's kind of like living in a resort. So you have interest in all of the areas. So if there was like, say a pickleball court or a marina or something, you kind of are buying into the whole thing.
Kind of like an association.
Yeah.
So does that allow them to increase density, more density than they would have had?
Well, so that's part of the concern that we had was you can allow certain lots, but as a planning and zoning board, if I like the project or I don't like the project, it's really not up to me. I'm really going by what the city ordinance says, and I'm making my judgment based on what the city ordinance says. So having a planned unit development like that with higher density is a possibility that they could ask for just because the zoning ordinance allows it. And we can approve and deny it. I mean, we can go through that. Right. Yep, and in the end, we're an advisory board, and we are advising to the city council. And we're lucky enough to have Don as a liaison, and Ross is here too. So it's not like it's not a conjointed process. We're all kind of in this together.
I guess I'm confused. I thought the way it was zoned now is more restrictive than if the zoning was changed. Yes, right?
Brittany, you can.
From a subdivision standpoint, it is. So with what they proposed, if they were in an OSR zoning, they're allowed, what did it come to? Roughly 10 lots. But with an SR zoning, just by a subdivision, then they were allowed to get to that 11 number. Right? 11? Yes. But if you're doing a common interest community, since you're buying interest in the whole area, you have more opportunity for higher densities. I don't know what that exactly looks like, because one thing I don't think that developer took in count is for an NE lake, which is natural environment, as you've all pointed out, tier levels are 400 feet when they're typically closer to 200, 267 typically. So that will come into play. I don't know exactly what that will look like in terms of amount of housing. So we'll have to see how that plays out.
I guess, Brittany, what Kevin McCormick pointed out was that what this was wanting them to do is to get 4 lots on Roy Lake, where the current zoning will have 200 foot.
Yep.
So that means essentially they would go from the 4 down to 2 there.
Yep.
So, the lots 6, 7, and 8 are really have the 200 feet for the current zone.
Yep.
So he just pointed that out. So I guess I wanted to make sure that, because that was your question, what is the difference? And that's the major difference that they pointed out. What the zoning change allowed them to do was get 4 lots that are joined Roy Lake.
Right, as a subdivision, not as a CIC.
Great, not
Yep.
as a CIC, we're talking about what they talked about tonight, what the sketch plan was.
Yep.
So, everybody, I think that's pretty clear.
I'm glad you read that, because I kept saying, what is the advantage to them of, having the zoning change if they, keep on saying, well, we're gonna, we got more of this way than the other way. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead. Raising your hand. Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
If you're saying put docks out on Bass Lake until they can get to the water, do you realize, of course, the docks are gonna be in the middle of the lake? Because of they're gonna be 400 feet out and you have a little docking. Okay, second of all, if we wanna follow this and do we come to what? The third Tuesday meeting? I mean, this is support, this is what we want, so we want to follow what is on it.
Yeah, so we'll have a meeting the first Tuesday of every month. Usually it's do you have the time for the next meeting already?
It's at 6 p.m.
6 p.m.
Yep, but the recommendation for denial will go to the city council next week on Tuesday at 7 p.m.
Okay, so we should come to that, right?
Yeah, I would recommend you come to that, yep.
Okay, and we should come to the first Tuesday of the month meeting.
Yeah, and this is going to be a very long process. I mean, it's going to go well into the summertime if they decide to do that. We like to have people come. Normally it's busy and there's nobody out there, so this is nice. Yeah, great.
My love is.
Yeah.
Will you be opening those up to Zoom meetings so we won't have to travel up for every meeting?
There will not be Zoom meetings because that's not our procedure. It's just too much for us to handle for controlling Zoom and YouTube and trying to run the meeting. It's just not our procedure. We won't be doing that. But you are always welcome to submit comments to me, absolutely, and I'll pass them along. Or you can live stream it on YouTube.
The issue that we have when you get Zoom meetings and you get a lot of people is I've done some this winter where you have one person talking and they don't know their microphone's on, and then that person's talking and you can't hear what's going on. So it's COVID is really horrible in that regard because you can't really communicate with the public as well as you should. So it's easier just to do it this way, and then any communication, if you're not able to make it, should go to Brittany, and then she can express it. And she always does a good job on either giving us the exact letter so we can read through everything, or talking to us before or after the meetings.
Yeah, and if you can't come to the meeting, you can watch us on YouTube, and after the fact, you can watch the whole thing.
I got them all, yeah.
Yeah.
And they're all provided to us right here. Yeah.
So is the city council meeting not Zoom either? Just curious, we know?
None of our city meetings are through Zoom. No.
Yeah, in the back.
I appreciate that you're gonna go out and check the land out a little more thoroughly. I also recommend if you could get on a boat and access it, look at it that way. And you can try to go out there, if this is gonna be a long process, go out there when the leaves are on the trees, and you'll have an emotional experience. And then the concern, if this goes through, we could have another 75 houses in the back of the lake if we subdivide the same way we're going. And that could just lose it. Thank you.
So just their options are twofold. They can either say, okay, it's not going to be zoned the way we had hoped, so we're going to come in with a new plan that meets the current zoning, which it will, I don't think will be the CIC hopefully, but, or they can challenge it at the city council.
Yep, and then throughout that process, and we can make conditions. I mean, we can make a condition that you have to do an environmental impact study. You have to do, we can make those conditions to be even considered as for approval. So that's a part of that whole process as we kind of step through it. Yep. Yep. I'll go over here first.
Brittany, can you go back to the plot, please?
Yeah.
I just am having a hard time. It's so small to figure out what, so, I'm sorry, we left this, so I can, so this road here is which road?
That-
Shelley White, I'm quarter owner at 2552 to Roy Lake. Fisher White. So what road is this here? Is that the one that they're proposing?
Yes.
And where does it come off? What's this road?
Right lane.
That's right. Yep.
And do we know what parcel numbers these are?
I don't.
You can, if you are not familiar, Crow Wing County GIS, if you go to Google search Crow Wing County GIS, it's very detailed. This is what we're looking at right here, where you can, if you do the interactive, you can click on and you can see who the owners are. I mean, there's a whole bunch of property information that you can find just by going to the GIS website.
Sure, I get that.
Yep.
But I guess I'm trying to figure out where they want to project that road off.
Okay.
Which parcels are those?
Yeah.
Looks like these two right here. My computer isn't loading. I'm trying to get it to pull up owners.
60 or 61 is yours. Yeah. We're 62, I think, but. It might be, okay.
We should probably move on to the Stephens review. I know Cindy is waiting.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Can I just give a little information? You should have just received some of your tax statements recently. I know I did. Okay, you can contact the county office to find out what your parcel identification number, the PID number is too. They're very helpful, so.
Quick question. You talked about communicating with the residents. Please include Lakeshore residents if we requested us not to make sure we need to have all communication at the same time. The municipal residents get it, because it makes a difference. I'll make sure the Lake Association has, you have their address. I'll make sure of that. Thank you.
Can you?
It is not including on plan
Not at this time.
No.
That's going to be Public Works.
Yeah, that's going through the Public Works Committee. That's not this part.
Why didn't we review the sketch plan for 668, which is on the agenda tonight? Why is that developer not here today?
He's not here.
We're moving on to that.
Yep.
I'm sorry, what was that?
We are moving on to that. It will be addressed, yep. Yes, yep.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to sketch plan review for PID 281-00660. That's 68.
Is it possible to have the minutes to this meeting be presented to us, or not, or?
They'll be online, and then Maggie will post the YouTube video of everything that was discussed, and that's usually you upload it very quickly. It's already up. There you go.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, no problem. Lucky you're on the end, right? Yeah.
I want to make one comment. I'd like to go over, it's not my responsibility or my place, but I'd like to apologize for one of the members that spoke here earlier when he was doing some threats. I just think I was so far out of line.
Well, I mean, I understand that some people get heated, and it's a personal thing, so it happens. It's fine. Yeah, it's fine. All right, moving on to the sketch plan for 281-0068668.
I did want to provide a little detail on this one because they are using the base density increase chart that is on page 5 of the staff report provided to you.
Yep.
I have some question as far as if you are comfortable with the 10% increase for removing all non-conforming structures, as there are no structures. Seems that it doesn't meet the intent. However, they did use, I believe, all sections of that chart for your reference.
Okay. Do you want to kind of just tell us what your deal is, and then we can go from there?
Sure. My name is Cindy Hitty. I'm with Stonemark Land Surveying, and I am representing Tom Steffens, the applicant. And he was planning on being here. Unfortunately, his flight got canceled today and couldn't. He is watching, and we have been communicating, and I have watched or listened to all of the comments from the area. Of course, we're to the north of the previous applicant, so I have taken those notes down, and we will be discussing that with my client as well. Our plan is to have a residential planned unit development. It's a little bit different than what the previous applicant is doing. What we would like to do is a residential development where you cluster all the buildings into one spot, preserving 50% of the property and green space. And then we are hopefully going to utilize the density increases, which means that we will be putting the buildings back away from the lake to increase our density. We will be, I have to get the list. We will be making sure that we follow like Brittany had said, we'd like to utilize all of them. And I guess I have to get the list out again because that just.
The reduced impervious coverage was the third
yes,
one.
Thank you. The impervious coverage, we would like to keep at 15%, which will keep the runoff. And that allows us to increase the density with your permission. We have a basic plan put together, and that is what we're here is to find out how you feel about that plan and what to expect with the density increases, if that is something that you are going to be in favor of, and some input on the development.
Just under current zoning, how many structures are they allowed?
So based on my quick calculations, our tier 1, we would be allowed 2, but then with the density increase, we would be allowed a third one. And then, and this is based on very approximate area. So again, we didn't want to spend a lot of money doing a lot of big plans. We want to get your feedback first before we come in with a preliminary plat and all that.
The question is, under the zoning it is right now and everything, how many structures can you put in the way it is right now?
Total,
total?
we are at 11. No, I'm sorry. We are at 7 total. No, that's not right either. Yeah, 7 total, but with the density increases, we'd be 10
Okay,
or
so
11.
you want to increase it from 7 to
11.
11? And why?
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 Because we are being stewards of the area and trying to push everything back, but then making it feasible to do the development as well. And it will be increasing some of the density or the tax base for you, and also helping with the community and small businesses, including myself. So I believe that strong businesses, strong community, it builds a strong community, and a strong community, we need, people.
Linda, do you have any questions?
Not right now. I'm truly not familiar with where this is. It's right off of Roy Lake Road.
It's just north of the previous application.
It's assuming that they're gonna go into a bend and that's like road.
Correct. That is one of the requests, is that we have looked at vacating that road.
Vacating that road?
The road that,
Vacating Bass Lake Road?
That gives uninterrupted access to Bass Lake.
Will the development have a shared well?
yes, it would be a shared well and shared septic.
Okay. And on the drawing that's on there, is it indicated? I'm not seeing it.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Where the septic facilities would be?
So there is I don't know if you can pull it up, the site plan, the big rectangle box.
Yep, okay.
Is going to be the septic, and the well is further to the north on the top of the hill. And there's a stormwater basin in between.
Is there going to be a requirement for advanced treatment system on this?
That I can't answer.
Okay,
I'm not a septic person.
okay.
On here, it's got an 8-foot boardwalk to dock. Is this the one that's already was recently put in?
I don't believe so. This is a proposed plan.
Yeah. 20-foot wide drive.
Kristen, do you have any questions?
Well, it's showing, right now on that plan, they're showing 14 dwellings.
Correct. That was whether that we would come in with a rezone if that was a possibility, but we've heard the previous application, and we were aware that that could be the case, that we'd be proposing a plan based on what the current zoning is. So the density that's shown on there is not going to be what it is based on the zoning it currently is.
Okay, thank you.
What was the square footage on some of these homes?
That would be in the notes. I don't have that by heart, but I can get that for you.
We're showing 1,200.
1,200? Okay.
Thank you.
So it's going to be like a patio home type is kind of the idea?
Say that again.
On a single slab? Is that
They're
the
going to
idea?
be walkouts. Some are going to be walkouts.
Okay. Is the association, is it an association type where there's shares of the whole property and then the individuals own their homes? How does that work?
So usually you own your home, and then you have the right to use the rest of the property. So there would be an association, and that would be put into, into the documentation of what is allowed and what's not allowed.
Okay. Normally that's submitted with the application, so you
Correct.
have
would have to, yes.
a governing rules for the association.
Is that going to be a rental situation?
I don't believe so. It will be sold as a residential, not a resort. I don't know if that would be whoever buys it, I suppose, with if you're talking about vacation rental, that would not be the developer's control.
It would
Unless
be
it's
if
an
it was-
association.
Right.
I mean, I don't know that, I guess. You're right. It could be put in the association and I don't have that answer. Is that something that you would like me to?
Well, you'd want to look into, I mean, the rules for VRBO now and rentals is done by the county. The city is involved anymore.
Okay.
So you need to check with them on the exact requirements and the licensing requirements. Normally, people don't really like to have a rental if it's going to be their permanent residence, but if it's an association, then you can kind of dictate those rules, so.
Correct.
So this is up above by Upper Roy Lake Road. And then down below is what the other sketch. I mean, the housing density is just going crazy in this whole plot of land. This is like way too much.
A lot of tree cover in that area. What are you going to do with the trees?
Yeah.
Are you going to clear cut the trees?
Only in where is necessary. We would like to preserve as much as we can, but there is going to be some development.
You'd have no problem then with custom work on the grading. In other words, only take out enough to actually build the structure and leave everything else. Make that a condition. And I assume it's a private road.
Correct. I can't answer for my client.
Yep, that's just
He-
something that
he
you
had
want to include when you go
distressed-
through it.
Right, I'm writing down notes, I'm taking it to him. I will have him address that when we come in with a plan.
When you get to the final plan, that's a lot of what people like to see as plans. And I know when you do developments, sometimes if you damage the root system, they're gone. And then it costs thousands of dollars to cut them down afterwards. So sometimes if you're gonna show what you're gonna cut down on then plantings after that, just be a little bit more detailed in the survey. Sometimes that goes a long way.
There seems to be a conflict on the road going down to the lake, just above the parking for 4 cars there. It goes outside the property line. Do you see that?
The existing road?
See where it says survey line?
Yes.
Look
that's
at the road just to the north there. It goes outside of the property line.
That's existing. That's the existing road. That's the road that they would like to ask to be vacated.
So what are you going to do to clear the title then? You just can't leave a road. If the road has been there for 20 or 25 years, you might have to write a prescription to use it. But if you're going to do a plat like this, you probably want to clean that all up.
Is the public allowed to make a comment at all?
Not for sketch plan review. We'll go through old business. If you look at at the format for the meeting, we'll go through the sketch plan review, we'll do old business, we'll do the administrator's report, and then at the bottom, number 11, we'll go through comments and questions again. I'm sorry? Cottage?
Down here, cottages.
Yeah, if you go to the original GIS map, there'll be an original plat name, and I don't know how old this is. Sometimes they're very old, especially in this area. Okay, post plan, okay,
So a cottage is a house?
yep. Basically.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions for the sketch plan review? No. Mark, did you have any concerns?
Well, I guess the one will be, this applicant is really, as part of this, is requesting vacation of Bass Lake Road down to the lake. I mean, before that could happen, there would need to be considerable research with 37 lakeshore residences and what's in their deeds and
Right.
all of that. And the city would also have to have a plan for an alternate road. So I don't know the time frame and everything, but I would anticipate that may not happen if they want to try to do something.
Road vacations are very, very difficult. Generally,
Well,
especially when there's other residents involved.
Is this going to Public Works at all?
this is not meant for public works. You know, they reviewed the previous one and, Public Works was provided with, with information that, it is possible to, extend Bass Lake Road up the hill and connect it to Roy Lane. But then there would have to be improvements to Roy Lane, and on the side corner. So there's a whole, I'll say, some people ask about whether there's a study, but that information has been given to, they've not taken any action. The city has no, I'll say, Don, there's been no set study or, that was in the future plans. It was more or less pushed by the first applicant you saw here tonight.
Okay. Did you have any more questions for us?
The only thing that I guess I have not heard about is, well, except for Linda had stated that you weren't about the density increases. If we meet those requirements, what is it, I guess, is it, do you have the right to deny, or I shouldn't say right, is it in your ordinance to allow, because it's in your ordinance, is it allowed if we follow those rules, or can you deny that? And are you going, how do you feel about that? Because I don't know if it's just in the ordinance and we follow it, like lot density, when you're looking at lots, if you can meet the three or four requirements of buildable area, lot width, then as long as we meet those rules, it'd be hard to deny that.
I'll refer to Brittany.
It's up on the board there. It says that density increases are maximums and not guaranteed unless approved by the
Okay.
planning commission. I would read that as you guys have the discretion on each box, what you are willing to grant, what you're not. Maybe you're more comfortable with a 5% increase over 10, or it seems like it's very up to you guys.
Okay. So you can kind of get a feel for what Linda felt and what some of the neighbors are feeling. So that's going to be under consideration.
Well, the fact that there are these units that are bam, 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 right in a row. How big is the land that they're on?
17 acres.
Pardon me?
17 acres.
No, each unit.
Oh, it's just a postage stamp. So whatever it is, as big as the houses.
Are you talking about the distance between the houses? Can you specify what you think the distance between the homes would be?
Well, I believe you have a requirement between buildings.
Yep.
And we would have to meet that, whatever the requirement is. But I don't know what this plan, I did not put this plan together.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions that you had?
Another thing, Mr. Chair, down there, there's 4 parking spaces down next to the lake. Are those people going to bring their boats down there and put them in there and leave their cars? Is that what it's for, or what are the parking spaces down there for?
I don't have that answer, but I will find out and make sure that it's expressed.
Do you know if buck would be brought in the winter and where that would be stored? Because there's not a lot of area, just kind of a general question about the dock, because it will be a very long one, it looks like, in multiple slips. Maybe just something you could find out too.
Okay. Anything else that you had a question for? No? Okay.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much for your time.
Yep.
Are these all single unit houses? I mean, single, yeah,
Yes,
like one family home?
one family home.
All right, moving on to old business. We have none. Planning and zoning administrators report.
We did have 10 new permits issued in the last month, 6 of which were dwellings, so that's picking up as expected. I also did have 2 meetings with 2 other potential developers that are coming, so we are definitely in the midst of our development season, so I expect those coming. And then we did also have 3 new violations, so we currently have 4 active violations. One was a carryover that was given a hard deadline to complete, and then if it is not completed by the 19th, we will bring them before Planning Commission as of next month.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Okay. Any other questions for Brittany? No? Okay. We'll circle back. Did you have any questions from the public? I don't know. What is typically the format in this case where
This
we?
is commissioners' comments and questions. Technically, public comment is done.
Okay. Let's, if you have any questions, let's direct them to Brittany right now. And then she can direct them to us so we can kind of get done with the meeting here and then we can communicate that way.
Also, if you want to be on the email list, there's a piece of paper on the podium here. Please write legibly. I'm not the greatest at cursive, so if you can make your print very clear, and I will add you to our email list. Yes, yep. Yeah, for sure.
This is an email list based on these different parcels.
This would be for like, if they apply for a preliminary plat next month, since you would be an interested party, I would just let you, I would send the agenda out essentially. Yep. Yes. I didn't catch that last part.
Okay,
Send us all the information, the filing to respect to this particular developer, or anything that's being pursuant to a certain parcel.
It would only be for the plans that have been presented already. If these 2 were to fall through and someone were to come forward 6 months from now, likely we would not use the same mailing record. We would just do the Minnesota state statute requirements.
And can you tell us those other developments that are, you said you have 2 other developers coming? Are those,
Yeah.
I'm not at liberty to discuss those.
Let's finish up our meeting here real quick and then you can ask those questions. Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I would like to make a motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Yes, I will.
All those-
Second.
All those approved?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Meeting is adjourned. Yep.